deal, huh?
That's why shows like yours are so important.
We have an independent county-elected sheriff that's the head of law enforcement in Jacksonville/Duval County. And I know how to work toward making this city safe.
We can't be shy about speaking on things such as faith and politics. We have to remember, in a free society, the public square belongs to all of us.
I'm not interested in North Florida looking like Orlando or Miami. I love where we live, but I think that good jobs means that people that live in this district can stay in this district.
Fishing and hunting is funding a large part of your conservation projects in Florida, and we want to make sure that those are forever preserved.
And the problem with this industry at this point is that they actually target our youth. You can see it in their marketing strategies, where it's bright colors, fun names.
And that's going to be endlessly litigated.
Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Hey, it's Drew Steele with an offer that can help steer your retirement in the right direction. Look, we're going to navigate the turbulent waters of 24 with this financial uncertainties and shifting tides. Having expert guidance is more crucial than ever, and that's where my good friend Alfie Townsend comes in. As Southwest Florida's certified financial planner professional, Alfie brings expert knowledge and insight. His latest book, Making Waves in Retirement, isn't just a guide. It's your navigational compass for mastering the financial seas. With decades of experience, Alfie has crafted a powerful roadmap to help you chart your course and make impactful waves in your retirement. Look, for a limited time, you can claim your free copy of this valuable guide. That's right, no cost. This book is more than just pages. It's your blueprint for a prosperous and fulfilling retirement. Don't let this opportunity drift by. Text book to 239-747-1080. That's book to 239-747-1080. Look, secure your free copy today. Let's make 24 the year you confidently navigate towards a brighter financial future. Text book to 239-747-1080.
I've been dipping snuff for well over 30 years. You know, I could wake up in the morning and have a weird lump in my gums. Guess it's like playing Russian roulette, really. I would love grandchildren. And if by quitting it extends my life some, I would gladly lay it down.
Visit tobaccofreeflorida.com to find free resources to help you quit your way.
Today, push harder, push forward, push vigorously.
There are things that I am hiding from people that I'm trying to inspire.
You can do whatever you set your mind to.
I feel like a hypocrite a lot of the times.
Don't give up on yourself ever.
Smoking, I hide it because I'm ashamed of it. I want to get out of the shadow. I want to show people there is light away from the darkness. I am going to quit.
Visit tobaccofreeflorida.com to find free resources to help you quit your way.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today. We're with Liam after his 4th military move, when being new is starting to get old. We're with Tara during the holidays, when she misses home the most. We're with all service members and their families who need connection, comfort, and a home away from home. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
It's always a good day when you hear from TJ Meister from the Floor Meisters in Naples, 6281 Naples Boulevard, 239-596-4964. All right, let's see what's going on with TJ today. How are you, TJ?
I'm doing well, thank you, Drew. It's good to hear you on the radio.
Thanks, TJ. Appreciate it. All right, Floor Meisters, what do we got going on?
Well, we're just keeping up with the demand for Core-Tec. Just had to order a truck and bring it in from the west coast of the United States to keep up with all the needs and wants of the people of Southwest Florida. Somebody doesn't have it, give me a call. I probably do.
Why do people love Core-Tec so much?
Well, it's waterproof, kid-proof, pet-proof. So if you got a pool, no problem. If you got a dog, no problem. If you got a husband that spills, no problem.
You got to call the Floor Meisters in Naples. What do you need? Tile, carpet, Core-Tec, 6281 Naples Boulevard in Naples, 596-4964. Give them a call, 596-4964 for the Floor Meisters.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just got to hold on. and know we'll get through this.
Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Thank you for waking us all up out here, for all you do.
Thank you for giving us a voice.
For being out there helping keep the constitutional republic. I want to thank you for
your support for veterans in the military.
Educating us.
Standing up for conservatism.
Giving us the truth.
Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Well, I could ask you. I mean, tomorrow, getting to know everybody. Derek's in the studio. Nina's in the newsroom, working hard to bring you the headlines as they break. We got a great show today. You're going to stay tuned for all 3 hours of the show today. Going to be joined in just a little bit by my old friend, and probably an old friend to some of you as well, Scotty Nell Hughes. Congresswoman Nan Hayworth is going to join us as well, former Congresswoman from the great state of New York. Colleague of mine, David Safavian, formerly, I guess he's still more or less over at CPAC, the folks who put on the big CPAC conference. He's going to be joining us. Brandon Weichert is going to be joining us as well. And then we've got an extra special super secret guest in the last hour of the show. You're not going to want to miss that at all. You can join the conversation while I am on the air. You can join the conversation when I'm not on the air, I suppose. 866-588 8303 866-588-8303 is how you chime in while I'm on the air. Obviously, listen, big news today. Got a couple of things we're going to be talking about, just so you know. We've got, of course, Joe Biden fomenting chaos as he leaves office, banning offshore drilling, banning natural gas powered water heaters, or not all of them, but a huge percentage of them. Just really trying to do what he can to cripple the incoming administration. We got him flubbing things right and left. We got Justin Trudeau deciding he's going to step down. He can't stand the heat of Donald Trump joining or Donald Trump coming back into office. But of course, we're going to start here with Kamala Harris. In fact, before we get to that, let me just explain a little bit about who I am, so you're not all confused. It's all very strange for me to be speaking right into the camera here. So I'm a host from up in the Northeast. I'm broadcasting from Virginia right now. Hope that doesn't dispel some of the mythos here at home. But I do have a Florida connection, lived up in Northwest Florida for a few years, was a lifeguard on the Gulf of Mexico, which was a fantastic, fun experience. Very familiar with Florida and Florida politics. In addition to doing radio, I do some podcasting. I host a show called The Lunch Hour with Federal Newswire. That is a deep dive interview show. We got a new episode today. I'll talk about that later on in the show. Do a show called Andrew and Jerry Save the World with Jerry Rogers, who is the editor of Real Clear Policy. He may join us tomorrow. And then in addition to all of this, I do public policy work for the Conservative Political Action Coalition, CPAC. The folks, as I said, who put on that big CPAC conference every year. I run their Center for Regulatory Freedom. So all this stuff that we talk about when we're talking about DOGE and the Department of Government Efficiency and how we can rein in the power of the executive branch, that's a lot of the stuff that I deal with. I also deal with healthcare policy. So when we're going to be talking about offshore drilling, I'm going to spend some time talking about the work that I do. In the meantime, let's start here. That's a lot. It's a lot in 3 minutes, isn't it? A lot to digest. So today's January 6th. And if obviously, if we could talk about the anniversary, which we will in a moment, because obviously folks could make that comparison. If you've not been glued to your TV, You may not know that up in the Northeast, we were hit, especially in the mid-Atlantic states, we were hit with a big snowstorm. And so there was some real question as to what was going to happen up on Capitol Hill today. Of course, I had the thought at one point in time was, boy, isn't it interesting? You wonder how history would have been different if a massive snowstorm had hit Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021, and there hadn't been the riot at the Capitol or people entering the Capitol building. You know, if it had just really been limited to a protest outside, what would the Democrats' narrative have been for the next 4 years? Anyway, if history and if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, oh, what a party we'd have. But anyway, here was the very uncomfortable moment when Kamala Harris had to announce Donald Trump had won. Here she is certifying the election.
The state of the vote for the President of the United States, as delivered to the President of the Senate, is as follows. The whole number of the electors appointed to vote for President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, the majority is 270. The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris.
Wow.
Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes. The whole number of electors appointed to vote for Vice President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, a majority is 270. The votes for Vice President of the United States
we don't need any more of that. So as you can see, your heart has to go out to poor Kamala Harris for having to announce that she lost the election. It's happened before. It'll happen again. The Republic endures. But that was the scene up on the Hill. And obviously, with that, a page turns, doesn't it? Because as we move forward, and we know that the left is going to hold on to J6 for a long time, obviously it would be a very different environment if Kamala Harris won the election and Democrats continued to push this. I think it would have been different if it hadn't been such a resounding victory for Donald Trump in November. For them to continue this, but I think it becomes very hard for them to continue this narrative. What do I mean by this narrative? Well, here's Sunny Hostin on The View today. She said something, hyperbolic, a little hyperbolic.
I think we need to find moral clarity, in this country. And I just remember after January 6th, you had someone like Mitch McConnell placing the blame on January 6th where it belongs, squarely on Donald Trump's shoulders. And then you started seeing people backtrack that and losing their moral center. You had Condoleezza Rice, I believe, on this very show saying, we need to move on from January 6th. I say no. You don't move on, because January 6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, like World War II, things that happened, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery, we need to never forget.
Okay, something, it's like you hear this, and it's like, God, what a dummy. I mean, here's the thing, guys. I don't know about Drew, but I know that I was always taught you never punch down when you're on the air. But sometimes you just hear something that is so patently dumb, and you have to call out that dumbness. Well, first of all, besides the fact that World War II was not a dark time in American history, World War II was actually a glorious time for America. I mean, obviously, not Pearl Harbor, the tragedy of Pearl Harbor, but America coming together and defeating the great evils around the world was actually a triumph. I'm sure Sunny Hostin wasn't talking about FDR ignoring the pleas of the Jews wanting to come from Europe to America and sort of letting them perish would set that all aside. I'm not sort of saying that even then that is one of the darkest moments of American history. It's dark, but you know, to put a riot in the Capitol in context and to say that somehow because Mitch McConnell recognizes that things aren't always what the initial narratives seem to paint them as, you know, as you peel back the facts and you learn more about a situation, that he cannot come to different conclusions. That's not losing your moral center. That's being a rational person approaching things in a rational manner, which is what we need in America. Now, I'm not the only one who had this thought. Scott Jennings, and you know, if you've ever heard me on the radio, you know that I've become a big fan of Scott Jennings on CNN. Scott Jennings defies the norm on CNN. You know, CNN for the longest time only had two kinds of Republicans on, either never Trump Republicans or Republicans they felt that they can make look stupid. That was it. You know, those are the only kinds of Republicans they would have in the air. Then someone, I guess Scott Jennings, made the case. They thought they can make him look stupid. They don't. They didn't, but they kept him on, to CNN's credit. Scott Jennings had this to say.
In light of all the rhetoric and things we're going to hear people say today, is that ultimately it was the American people that got to decide ultimately how we feel collectively as a country about January the 6th. And already today, we have heard some people in other venues say extraordinarily unhinged and vile things, comparing January 6th to the Holocaust, to slavery, to World War II. I think we need to arrange our feelings and control ourselves accordingly here and not go off the deep end. It was not a good day. Political violence cannot be condoned, but we can also be measured in how we view it in light of the rest of American and world history. What's happening today is ultimately a good thing because both parties, for the first time in my adult life, are accepting the results of an election.
Well, the first time in a very long time, and he was called out for saying that. But you know, here's the interesting thing. You know, as I think back on this post, and I think back on the thesis that Sonny Hostin lays out, and to an extent the thesis that Scott Jennings lays out. And I come back to this because, you know, on the one hand, you could focus on January 6, 2021 as a dark day in American history. I think, you know, folks going up on Capitol Hill and committing violence. Yeah, that's a dark thing. But we have to remember ultimately, and if Joe Biden had been a true leader, which he is not, if Joe Biden had been a true leader, what Joe Biden should have done was to come out and offer up the truism, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, whomever, and offer the truism that despite all of the violence, the Republic endures. The Republic endured, that there was no way that, even let's assume for a moment that it was an insurrection, which it was not. And we're going to get to something that Jake Tapper said in a moment. Assuming that it was an insurrection, the idea that somebody wearing war paint and a buffalo head helmet on their head, that they thought that when they breached, that they thought that they could have thought, I'm sorry, but I know I'm mangling the English language here, but I'm trying to do it in the right way to make the point appropriately. That if they thought that by breaching the Speaker's office that they somehow would become the government, that's not the way it works. The government exists because of the constitutional structures that we have. And so regardless of somebody breaching the Speaker's office, wearing a buffalo head or wearing whatever, wearing a colonial outfit, wearing a leather miniskirt and stilettos, whatever, right? It doesn't matter because that person does not become the seat of power in our government simply because they occupy that location. The seat of our government is wherever the Constitution is being upheld and being enforced. Now, we could get into discussions about moments in which the Constitution hasn't been upheld and enforced. That's a whole other debate here. But the point is, that's where I would have gone with all of this, is that the Republic endures. But Joe Biden didn't have that in his capacity to do at the time. The Democrats didn't have that. Why? Because, what did Rahm Emanuel say? Rahm Emanuel said, we never let a crisis go to waste. And this was a darn good crisis for them. They thank God every day, right? I mean, that's just it. We know they don't believe in God, or whatever, the Gaia, Earth Mother, whatever. They thank the gods and goddesses, the gods of Kobol, that there was no snow on January 6, 2021, so that they could get the riot that they created the conditions to do. And I'm not raising some kind of conspiracy theory. They created these conditions. That's just by virtue of how they did things. When Nancy Pelosi, and she admitted this, I should have pulled up that audio clip. Nancy Pelosi admitted that she had turned down the offer of the National Guard. We have Muriel Bowser on the record saying she wanted the National Guard there. So those conditions were created. I got to tell you something. I'm going to go here because Jake Tapper weighed in on all of this. And he said something that if I'm Ted Cruz, I would seriously consider some kind of a defamatory lawsuit here. Here, let me play this.
Right now you're looking at images from the floor of the House of Representatives. Members of the House and Senate are gathering in what is there, and there is the Speaker Mike Johnson and Vice President Kamala Harris. It's obviously a bipartisan or even nonpartisan event where the leaders of this country come together.
All right, so let me pause it for a second. So he just sets this up. This is obviously a bipartisan or nonpartisan event to do this, right? We're celebrating the fact that they are actually going to certify the results of what was a very contentious and chaotic election. It was. But Jake Tapper can't leave well enough alone. He can't. He can't just leave it at that this was a bipartisan moment. No, he has to go on there.
To count the electoral votes, there's Ted Cruz, a senator from Texas, who was one of the main individuals who helped cause what happened 4 years ago by putting forward the falsehood that the vice president could somehow do something to stop the electoral count.
So we just got through saying that this is a bipartisan, nonpartisan thing, and Jake Tapper turns around. This is not years ago. This is just this morning. As folks were getting together, Jake Tapper said this. And if I'm Ted Cruz, I got to be sitting there going, well, if I'm Ted Cruz, right, I'm going to sit there and he would probably be saying, Andrew, he may not know me by my first name anymore. I don't know. But, there was a time Ted Cruz knew me by my first name. Yes, I'm name dropping. Not like Joe Biden. He knows more world leaders than anybody. But the point is that, Ted Cruz would probably say, something, it's just Jake Tapper. I'm not going to dignify that with a response. But nevertheless, what he's saying, at least in my opinion, is actionable. Right? This is the akin. What he's saying is that Ted Cruz was responsible for, if you believe that, and I think Jake Tapper believes that an insurrection occurred on January 6, 2021. So you're saying that Ted Cruz committed a crime. You are a news person saying that Ted Cruz is responsible for this crime being committed. I think that's a defamatory statement. As somebody else pointed out, you remember that Jake Tapper was a Democratic operative. Listen, before we move on from all of this stuff, and before we go to the news, let me just play this, because listen. This was Kamala today. I'm going to go back. Kamala today, in the unenviable position of having to announce that she lost the election. Here she is.
The state of the vote for the President of the United States as delivered to the President of the Senate is as follows.
All right. So there you get lucid Kamala right there. Yeah, Kamala drinking from the same glass as Joe Biden had her own less than lucid moment, and one wonders if she has somehow become more compromised. We've all had this thought, right? Watching Kamala speak at various points in time since the election, that there was something not quite right there. But here she is. I think it was Friday.
Join me in pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the
Yeah, she messed it up.
in pledging allegiance to our flag.
Madam Vice President, when you say that you're pledging allegiance to the flag, and then you turn around and you say you mess up the pledge, there's something wrong there. It's not as though you haven't done this thing before. So one wonders what it is. But again, we all should take some pity on Madame Vice President, because she sacrificed herself on the altar of politics. She thought she could do it. They thought she could do it. By the way, I've got a bunch in here of folks not sort of understanding why they lost. Schumer especially, we'll come to that later on here. Biden coming through here, and Biden having his moments here. But that's just it. You've got Democrats saying that Kamala, she could run. Listen, theoretically, she could run for president in 2028. I doubt that highly. I think in all likelihood, it's going to be Wes Moore from Maryland and Gavin Newsom running. Maybe some Democrats that we haven't thought about. There may be some emerging Democrat star that is out there. So listen, we got a huge show coming up. After the news, going to be joined by Scotty Nell Hughes. Yes, I know that rhymes. I did not intend for that to rhyme. I want to hear from you. By the way, I didn't say this before. In addition to calling into the show, 866-588-8303. 866-588-8303. You can also message me on Facebook while I'm on the air. Facebook.com/Andrew Langer Show, Langer. And you can message me on Twitter or X at Andrew_Langer on X. I am Andrew Langer. This is Florida's Voice with Drew Steele. We will be right back.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force, and I deployed 3 times. Being a veteran, it's interwoven into your DNA. It is really the absence of the connection and the purpose that can really drive a lot of veterans to some negative thoughts. For those who are in a suicidal crisis, the window of time to save somebody's life is very short. Our duty is to protect ourselves and protect our families. And one way you can do that is store your weapons safely. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's Drew Steele, and you probably know this. I've had a music career, an EMI published songwriter in the past. I've had a top 20 Billboard hit and movie soundtracks. But I got my start right here in Southwest Florida at Soundcheck Studios with Jim Becker. I worked with Jim when he was producing big names like Castrol and Beck's Beer and other commercial clients from ABC, NBC, CBS. He's done it all. It doesn't make a difference what your musical style is if you're talking about recording for bands or producing, music, jingles. He does it all at Soundcheck Studios. Recently, he worked with RCA artist Doja Cat and also a Sony artist Flip De Niro. A lot of great artists have made their way through Soundcheck Studios. So if you want to make your brand memorable with a jingle or maybe a commercial you want to cut, or maybe it's a band, give Soundcheck Studios a call today. 239-340-0515. That's 239-340-0515 for Soundcheck Studios.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Radical anti-hunting forces are working to ban fishing and hunting across the country. These extreme attacks on our heritage must be met. Thankfully, the International Order of T. Roosevelt is fighting back as the nation's premier organization defending our rights to fish and hunt. This April, you can step into the arena with us and join our fight in Naples, Florida. Join us at the historic Ritz-Carlton Tiburon and hear from world-class speakers, including Tucker Carlson. The annual event is the best place for conservationists, anglers, hunters, and all those who want to protect the outdoors to come together, build strategies to protect our rights, and expand opportunities in the future for generations to come. Visit IOTR.org to learn more about our organization and to sign up to see Tucker in April. Visit IOTR.org to learn more about our organization and to sign up to see Tucker in April. You don't want to miss this event.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
To some, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much, but that's not true. They're testing out vowels and consonants and trying different sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on meaning, especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Learn more at autismspeaks.org.
Hey, it's Drew Steele with a game-changing offer for those ready to master their retirement journey. Look, we're going to navigate unpredictable waters in 24, an election year marked by financial uncertainty. It's crucial. You've got to have expert guidance. That's where my good friend Alfie Townsend comes in. The Southwest Florida Certified Financial Planner Professional, Alfie brings unparalleled experience and insight to the table. His latest book, Making Waves in Retirement, it's not just a guide. It's your strategic compass for navigating the financial seas with confidence. Look, with decades of experience, Alfie has created a powerful roadmap. It'll help you chart your course and make meaningful waves in your retirement. And for a limited time, you can get your hands on this book free. That's right, no cost. The book is more than just a collection of stories. It's a blueprint for achieving a prosperous and fulfilling retirement. So don't miss out. Text book to 239-747-1080 right now. It's book to 239-747-1080 and claim your free copy today. Let's make 24 the year you confidently steer towards a brighter financial future. Text book to 239-747-1080.
Now, back to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Well, I'm not the I am Andrew. At Andrew_Langer on Twitter or X or whatever we call it nowadays. You can message me while I'm on the air, facebook.com/Andrew Langer Show. Please do so. You can also call if you want to join the conversation, 866-588-8303, 866-588-8303. That's how you get in touch with us here. We're going to be joined in just a moment by Scotty Nell Hughes. Scotty's a writer, commentator, political activist. I've known Scotty for a very long time. Scotty was the first person to let me know that, the first person who was convinced that Donald Trump was going to win in 2016. I was not so convinced at the time. It's funny. I mean, because you all don't know me, I'll explain a little bit more about myself. So I was a Trump skeptic, very, very much a Trump skeptic. I did not think, in fact, I got into trouble in the summer of 2015 because I said I had a better chance of winning the presidency than Donald Trump did. And, obviously I ate crow. But, it's one of those things where I did not know how Donald Trump was going to, or if Donald Trump was going to deliver on the promises that he made, because they were extraordinarily broad promises. And I've been to this rodeo many times before. And then, he won the election, and I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, positively surprised, because he started to deliver on those promises. And in those areas in which the areas that I find important, namely things like the size and scope of federal power, right? Because that's how you measure authoritarianism. In fact, I'm going to bring her on right now. Her name is Scotty Nell Hughes. She's a political analyst, a media personality. She has a Substack that's out there that is great. If you're not reading her Substack, you need to. Hello, Scotty. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year and happy January 6th. In fact, I think most Republicans, most conservatives right now need to make this a holiday. You need to make sure that you put out your letters to the government on the front doorstep. Make sure that you eat 1/3 of your child's plate to remind them of just government overreach. And of course, most importantly, you need to wake up the entire neighborhood at 6 a.m. with these stars and bars.
There you go. You know something? I've got my my light up American flag that I'm keeping outside, even in the snow here. So I'm very, very excited about that. But Scotty, as I was just saying, not sure if you heard me say it, you were the first person that I knew who was convinced that Donald Trump was going to win in 2016. He began to deliver on promises, proving you right. It's why I've always not the only reason, but one of the many reasons why I've relied on your counsel. You were very confident that Trump was going to win. What is different now? What is going to be different now with Trump presidency part the second than it was from the first?
Oh, that's such an excellent question. And I love the fact that you're actually man enough to admit that a woman is correct. Because, in this day and age, according to Republicans, you can't admit it. But you're obviously a dad to 2 daughters. So you know in your household that no matter even if you're right, you're going to be wrong. So I'm glad you're bringing that over to your journalism as well, to your broadcasting. Listen, it's real simple. Because what happens, you can always tell the person who's going to win. Same reason as Barack Obama, why he won in 2008. It's whoever inspires the engagement within the mainstream, within the community. You saw it with Barack Obama. You saw it with the hope that he brought. So it's pretty easy to see that he was going to win. And we saw that easily in 2016. In fact, and this is what the Democrats did not realize this election. Every time they mocked him, every time they brought up one of these frivolous cases against him, they had an obvious biased judge against him. That only propelled him to help him win. And Democrats never realized it. In fact, I think the number one reason that we need to say who actually got Donald Trump into office besides Donald Trump are the Democrats. And you have to look, you've got to give the credit where it's due, because they're the ones that really made the American people embrace Donald Trump, not see him as defeated in 2020, but more importantly, recognize that he really probably should have won in 2020, but more importantly, that he needed to be given a second chance to restore where we're at today.
Scotty, it's interesting because it is a very different Trump transition than there was between the Obama administration going into this. I think some of it has to do with the general incompetence of the Biden administration. They're trying to stir up as much chaos as possible moving forward and into this. But this is a much more disciplined Team Trump moving into this transition. Talk about the lessons that they've learned and how moving forward it's going to be a very different posture.
You know, it's funny you bring it up because I'm just about to record a video that's going to talk about, so you want to go to the inauguration. And I know you've been to several inaugurations. I've been to several. So I know what it's like behind the scenes, but also to the general public. You can tell that there's definitely a lot more calmness, much more approach to being organized, but more importantly, not trying to make all the splashes. I think Susie Wiles said it best today in her article, in her quote to Axios, saying, we're going to get rid of the drama. We're going to get rid of the people, the ones that are out there backstabbers and the ones that are leakers. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen this term. Now, I'm not so sure that she can, live in that perfect of a world, but at least they're putting it out there and they're making that to be one of their focuses. And the hope would be, even though this is on the heels of this past weekend, someone who used to be with NSC coming out and saying, pre-blowing the whistle, saying, listen, a lot of the folks, the staffers in charge of communicating with the various departments, they're already being told that they're going to be held over from the Biden administration, that they're not going to lose their job. Help, panic. I need to call attention to this. So I think Susie stepped out saying, nope, we are not going to have this drama. We're not going to have a lot of the Biden hangovers that we had to deal with, sort of the Obama hangovers from 2016 that still stayed within the government and continued to create problems. That in combination with those Republicans that were never a part of Trump's agenda, I think is why you saw a lot of the chaos. And I think Trump just has too much he has to do. He knows this is it. This is the second chance to finish what he started in the first term, and he's not going to let some of the petty drama that got him down in the first term happen this time.
You know, it's interesting because I one of the concerns that I had moving forward, if Trump was going to win, was about Republicans who had been Trump skeptics. Who would Trump, given how much guff was being stirred up by Trump's appointees in the first term, who would want to go into a second term? And I'm finding that this is not the case, that you now have folks who are so thoroughly disgusted by the incompetence of the Biden administration or by, just how the press was in the tank for Biden and for the Democrats and anti-Trump. A lot of folks are willing to go in who I wouldn't have thought were going to go in before. Are you seeing this as well? Are you tracking that at all?
Oddly enough, going into the Trump administration in 2024 is more popular than it was in 2016. Right. It's a little bit odd, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that you've been able to get other mainstream people to unite behind Donald Trump. I mean, let's talk about, as much as I don't like the Mar-a-Lago dinners and the pay for plays going down there and trying to, personally pay to get a job with the administration, it is working. But what's great is seeing, when you start seeing other major members of the public go down there, it starts to be, well, maybe if I do join the Trump administration because I believe in him, I'm not going to be demonized. And that's when I think there was so much fear that existed in 2016, that a lot of the good people, it's kind of like why we never can get good people to run for public office. They just know that they're going to put their name on the line. They're going to be raked through the coals. Same thing goes with becoming a staff member for the Trump administration. I feel like this time, because you do have people like Elon Musk and RFK and others that are around, they're like, you know what? I'm at least in a good crowd. If they try to rake my name through the mud because I'm standing up for my political values, at least I'm in a crowd that I want to be with this time.
Yeah. So Scotty, what are you looking for Trump to do day one, week one, month one? What's at the top of your list of priorities for Trump?
Well, I think we've already started to see that. I think we're already seeing some of those start to broker and try to figure the issue we have. And I think that's what we're all kind of questioning right now. And despite the grace, and you could tell definitely the fire that was consuming Kamala Harris today when she was swearing in those electors, they've been pretty calm on the outside, but we know they're not going to go easy. We're seeing as much chaos as they could establish, not only in the American economy, but today we saw a new whole round of sanctions that came down that's going to definitely affect our gas supply. They're doing everything they can to create foreign turmoil right now. And obviously with Justin Trudeau stepping down in Canada, there's a lot of opportunity.
Wow.
It's not Biden administration has to look too far in order to create chaos for this next administration. So I think it really depends on what is going to be the state of the United States on January 19th, exactly as to what Donald Trump does on day one, because most importantly, he's probably going to have to clean up the mess made by this administration since November.
Yeah, the Trudeau thing, all right, which is the weirder story? I mean, Trudeau stepping down, announcing, or Musk sort of going after Nigel Farage and that crowd in the UK. I mean, these are two very, I certainly didn't have either one of those on my bingo cards.
No, you didn't. But let me point out that it's interesting that Elon Musk, regardless of whatever your feeling is on him personally right now, I have to say anybody that goes after, I think regardless of how it happens, anybody that starts calling out these pedophiles, that starts calling out these rings that we do know exist in the various countries around the world, kudos to them. I think their soul is in the right place. If that is their intention, which I do believe Elon Musk is. Now, the question is he getting a little bit too close to home with these folks? I would tell him to be very careful with this. I mean, let's just remind ourselves, Jeffrey Epstein, as my daughter famously says, Jeffrey Epstein didn't hang himself. And we still don't know everybody on that list. So I would honestly say right now to Elon Musk, be very careful around this, because you're dealing with so many levels of just evil that they'll do anything for this not to be exposed, and they'll come after him himself. And so on top of that, you've obviously got Trump and Elon Musk and their friendship and their relationship, and the H-1B1 visas, and this idea that conservatives are splintering, which it has nothing to do with the visas, Andrew. You and I haven't talked, but that whole debacle that we saw last week, the drama supposedly between Elon and Team Elon Vivek versus Steve Bannon and Jack Posobiec. It was all about a power struggle, in my opinion. It had nothing to do with visas. None of these folks have any cares about H-1B visas or the immigration. I mean, yes, it's in their category that they like to talk about. It's the red meat, but they don't care about the specific issue. This was meant to be a power struggle to show who has more of an ear of Donald Trump. And I think in the end, as we've seen, looks like Elon and Vivek, even though it might have damaged them a little bit, they're still sitting at next to Donald Trump on New Year's Eve. So I think that just shows who won that fight.
Hey, Scotty, we got a couple of minutes here. I just got to pick your brain about this. College football bowls. Who are you looking at right now? What are you hoping for college football, the championship?
I gave up. I'll be honest with you. I know we're speaking for, let me just tell you, I am, as I just did, Florida's got one thing right. I cannot miss this moment to praise your audience right now, not only for having you to sub it and host, but the state of Florida and the people of Florida. You've got lots of things right, but let me tell you something you might not know about. They just put in a year ago something called the grandparent clause. And for any of us that have ever at college, if you have grandparents in the state of Florida, your child can apply for in-state tuition. And there are some amazing schools in the state of Florida. So I want to say, and what's going to happen is I think that's going to also boost her like you need it, more residents coming down to Florida. They continue to reinvest within their own community the right way. Instead of attracting scholarships for kids that are in Oregon and Wyoming, they're saying, nope, if you've already invested in Florida and your parents and your family is invested in Florida, we want you to come to Florida as well. So I have to give my praise to the Florida audience that's listening. I think it's a great, great thing. My child just applied to the University of Florida. My other child's going to look at Florida University just because they believe in the family structure as much as we do.
Here, here. Hey, one last thing before I let you go. Any hot spots in the Golden Globes last night?
I turned it on and I watched Demi Moore. I watched her speech, and that's all I needed. I thought that was very elegant. Other than that, I'm sorry. I do think that Wicked deserved a lot more of the awards that they got, but I don't give much credit to Hollywood anyways.
There you go. No, listen, I liked what Nikki Glaser had to say. We're going to play that clip later on. Scotty, how do folks find out more about the good work that you are doing? How do folks find your Substack?
Well, the easiest way is to go find my Twitter at Scotty N. Hughes and my Substack, Scotty N. Hughes as well. So thank you, Andrew, and good job hosting. Congratulations. Maybe you'll actually get into Florida instead of the mountains wherever you are.
Oh, well, there you go. Yes. Well, listen, we have to have this illusion there, Scotty. Thank you so very much for joining us today. Go check her out at Scotty N. Hughes on Twitter. Scotty Nell Hughes. Certainly take care. So yeah, we've got so much more coming up here on the show today. Want to hear from you. The number here, of course, is 866-588-8303, 866-588-8303. You can message me on Facebook. Yeah, we go. Sorry. You can message me on Twitter at Andrew_Langer, on Facebook as well, on Facebook.com/Andrew Langer Show. Listen, when we come back and do a reset.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Babes, what are you doing?
What? I'm just mowing the lawn.
No, it's blazing hot and dry out here. Don't you remember? Smokey Bear says.
Avoid using power equipment when it's windy or dry.
Where'd you learn this?
Oh, it's on
SmokeyBear.com with many other wildfire prevention tips.
Right. Thanks, honey bear.
Because remember, only you can prevent wildfires.
Brought to you by the USDA Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
All right, son. Time to put out this campfire.
Dad, we learned about this in school.
Oh, did you now? Okay. What's first?
Smokey Bear said to.
First drown it with a bucket of water, then stir it with a shovel.
Wow, you sound just like him.
Then he said.
If it's still warm, then do it again.
Where can I learn all this?
It's all on SmokeyBear.com with other wildfire prevention tips, because only you can prevent wildfires.
Brought to you by the USDA Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
I'll trust water bottles and a flashlight to save the day, but I'll be proved wrong.
With a tornado approaching, I'll realize that I like a wheelchair-accessible shelter.
When the floodwaters rise, I'll be up in the attic with 20 cans of beans. It's a recipe for disaster.
let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council. Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
when the storm rolls in, my time to find a pet-friendly evacuation center will have run out.
The scorching heat wave will leave me powerless to cool my insulin.
I'll face a hurricane without meds. Now that's a tough pill to swallow.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at USO.org today. We're with Liam after his 4th military move, when being new is starting to get old. We're with Tara during the holidays, when she misses home the most. We're with all service members and their families who need connection, comfort, and a home away from home. Are you with them? Learn more at USO.org today.
Now, back to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Hey everybody, I am Andrew Langer in for Drew today and for Drew tomorrow. So glad I can join you and you can join me on this Monday, the first Monday in January. A lot of you going back to school, if you were going back to work, or maybe if you took the end of last week off, I'm so glad I can join you. We got plenty of show coming up. Going to be joined in a couple of minutes by Nan Hayworth former congresswoman from the great state of New York. My colleague David Safavian from CPAC is going to join as well. Brandon Whiteshirt, Erica Donald's going to join as well. Got this here from Florida Voice's own assistant news director Eric Doherty. Writes, America made history today. A woman finally presided over her own defeat in a U.S. presidential election. That was pretty good. I appreciate that. I'd seen that earlier. I thought I had written that. I thought I had mentioned that, but I guess that I didn't realize he was with Florida's Voice. So that's good stuff. I mentioned this as we were talking to Scotty Hughes. Nikki Glaser. Listen, I didn't watch the Golden Globes last night. I didn't feel the need to. There wasn't anything I was particularly interested in seeing. I do like Nikki Glaser. She's a comedian, and she had a bit of a say about politicos in Hollywood. Here's what she had to say.
Now, some of you may know me as a stand-up comedian and from my appearances on Roast, but I am not here to roast you tonight. I want you to know that. And how could I, really? You're all so famous, so talented, so powerful. I mean, you could really do anything. I mean, except tell the country who to vote for. But it's okay. You'll get them next time, if there is one. I'm scared. Ariana, hold my finger. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't seen Wicked. I think Ariana Grande is just looking weird. She looks weirder and weirder. I mean, I don't know who looks more weird, Ariana Grande or the girl with the green skin. Now, again, this is funny because I like musical theater. I had kids who did musical theater. My wife and I'm man enough to admit this. We go up to New York about once a quarter and see a show. I'm a huge Stephen Sondheim fan. Not into the whole Wicked thing for a lot of reasons, and not even the politics stuff. But I guess it's a thing that a lot of folks want. I'll tell you what. In the next hour, we're going to talk more about the Justin Trudeau situation because we got some audio here of Kevin O'Leary, the guy from. Oh, good Lord, I was going to call it Let's Make a Deal. Shark Tank. You know him. He's on Shark Tank. He's had some things to say about this. We'll get to that. We'll get to that in the next hour when we hear from Justin Trudeau. In the meantime, let me just finish up with a little bit of Joe Biden. And Joe Biden's flubs over the weekend because he's still do I want to do that? Yeah, we'll just play one. Here is Joe Biden. Here is Joe Biden, angry Joe Biden.
So I remember sitting down, and Jim Eastland. I ran because of civil rights in my state. We were segregated by law to our great shame. Yeah. And here Jim Eastland and John Stennis and Herman Talmadge and all these guys, these Southern, by any definition, racist senators. And I sat there and listened.
There's Joe Biden talking about dealing with the racists.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
It's 4 a.m., Monday, and you're literally sucking baby snot through a tube because she's congested. Man, that's love. And if you love her that much, love her enough to make sure she's buckled in the right car seat. To make sure your child's in the right seat for their age and size, visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Show them you love them. Keep them safe. Visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. You let him try violin because you love him. And if you love him that much, love him enough to make sure he's buckled up and in the back seat. Find out more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
No way. No way. No way.
No way. My kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Talk to your kid about vaping. Visit talkaboutVaping.org.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele. Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Congratulations on your show.
Congratulations on your new show. Big deal, huh?
That's why shows like yours are so important.
We have an independent county elected sheriff that's the head of law enforcement in Jacksonville/Duval County. And I know how to work toward making this city safe.
We can't be shy about speaking on things such as faith and politics. We have to remember, in a free society, the public square belongs to all of us.
I'm not interested in North Florida looking like Orlando or Miami. I love where we live, but I think that good jobs means that people that live in this district can stay in this district.
Fishing and hunting is funding a large part of your conservation projects in Florida, and we want to make sure that those are forever preserved.
And the problem with this industry at this point is that they actually target our youth. You can see it in their marketing strategies, where it's bright colors, fun names.
And that's going to be endlessly litigated.
Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Hey, it's Drew Steele with an offer that can help steer your retirement in the right direction. Look, we're going to navigate the turbulent waters of 24 with this financial uncertainties and shifting tides. Having expert guidance is more crucial than ever, and that's where my good friend Alfie Townsend comes in. As Southwest Florida's certified financial planner professional, Alfie brings expert knowledge and insight. His latest book, Making Waves in Retirement, isn't just a guide. It's your navigational compass for mastering the financial seas. With decades of experience, Alfie has crafted a powerful roadmap to help you chart your course and make impactful waves in your retirement. Look, for a limited time, you can claim your free copy of this valuable guide. That's right, no cost. This book is more than just pages. It's your blueprint for a prosperous and fulfilling retirement. Don't let this opportunity drift by. Text book to 239-747-1080. That's book to 239-747-1080. Look, secure your free copy today. Let's make 24 the year you confidently navigate towards a brighter financial future. Text book to 239-747-1080.
I've been dipping snuff for well over 30 years. You know, I could wake up in the morning and have a weird lump in my gums. Guess it's like playing Russian roulette, really. I would love grandchildren. And if by quitting it extends my life some, I would gladly lay it down.
Visit tobaccofreeflorida.com to find free resources to help you quit your way.
Today, push harder, push forward, push vigorously.
There are things that I am hiding from people that I'm trying to inspire.
You can do whatever you set your mind to.
I feel like a hypocrite a lot of the times.
Don't give up on yourself ever.
Smoking, I hide it because I'm ashamed of it. I want to get out of the shadow. I want to show people there is light away from the darkness. I am going to quit.
Visit tobaccofreeflorida.com to find free resources to help you quit your way.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today. We're with Liam after his 4th military move. When being new is starting to get old. We're with Tara during the holidays when she misses home the most. We're with all service members and their families who need connection, comfort, and a home away from home. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
It's always a good day when you hear from TJ Meister from the Floor Meisters in Naples, 6281 Naples Boulevard, 239-596-4964. All right, let's see what's going on with TJ today. How are you, TJ?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Drew. It's good to hear you on the radio.
Thanks, TJ. Appreciate it. All right, Floor Meisters, what do we got going on?
Well, we're just keeping up with the demand for Core-Tech. Just had to order a truck and bring it in from the West Coast of the United States to keep up with all the needs and wants of the people of Southwest Florida. Somebody doesn't have it, give me a call. I probably do.
Why do people love Core-Tech so much?
Well, it's waterproof, kid-proof, pet-proof. So if you got a pool, no problem. If you got a dog, no problem. If you got a husband that spills, no problem.
You got to call the Floormeisters in Naples. What do you need? Tile, carpet, Cortec, 6281 Naples Boulevard in Naples, 596-4964. Give them a call, 596-4964 for the Floormeisters.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just got to hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Thank you for waking us all up out here, for all you do. And
thank you for giving us a voice.
For being out there helping keep the constitutional republic. I want to thank you for your support for veterans in the military. Educating us. Standing up for conservatism. Giving us the truth.
Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Well, hey there, everybody. I am Andrew Langer in for Drew Steele today. So glad I could join you. If you can join me, we can join each other. We've got Derek in the studio with me. We got Nina in the newsroom working hard to bring us, all of us, the headlines as they break. You can join the conversation, 866-588-8303, 866-588-8303. You can message me on X at Andrew_Langer, also on Facebook, facebook.com/Andrew Langer Show. I love getting messages from folks as I am on the air. Joining me right now is an old and dear friend, longtime and dear friend of mine, Congresswoman from the great state of New York. Many of you may know her. Her name is Nan Hayworth, Dr. Nan Hayworth. Nan, Happy New Year to you, my friend.
And a very happy New Year to you. What a propitious start to the year, having had President Trump and Vice President Vance certified today.
You know, Nan, let's talk about this because you served. What is it like being in the chamber when these certifications happen? What's it like being sworn in? What's the atmosphere up on Capitol Hill today?
Well, I didn't get the chance to certify because I was elected in, a by-election, if you will.
Right,
I was between. But no, that said, when the election is certified, the Senate comes to the House chamber. They are our guests. So in that sense, it's analogous to what happens with the State of the Union. Sure. And the atmosphere is always, for those of us, and I'm sure this crosses party lines, there is this tremendous sense of reverence for and responsibility for the perpetuation of our extraordinary constitutional republic. So I certainly hope the scene was one of, I think, comity, if you will. We saw Vice President Harris, Speaker Johnson standing, albeit, yes, it was probably not the most comfortable moment for either of them, but standing in a dignified way with each other. Right. I did notice that Senator Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, I think it was Nancy Pelosi, not sure, had to position themselves, I guess, after this event outside the chamber in mourning posture with their heads down.
Oh my goodness!
Such a sad day for the country.
1968 Olympics, not this. This was not. Yes.
The performative nonsense.
Motion. Yeah, no, yeah. Well, this is where we are. I mean, in a realm in which all too frequently things descend into kabuki theater, this was the kabukiest of the kabuki theater.
The kookiest and the kabukiest, yes.
Yes.
And they'll just be ignored,
So let's go here because why I love talking to you is because we can get down to the substance of things. As you can imagine, I have been watching the Federal Register with bated breath every day, as this administration comes to a close, to see what they're going to do. It's actually been relatively quiet for the most part. But then late last week, we got the ban on natural gas-powered water heaters. We got the CFPB announcing sweeping new regulations on bank overdraft laws that is going to cause a bunch of folks to lose their bank accounts. I can talk about that in detail. But this morning, we woke up to the announcement from the White House that they are banning all offshore gas drilling now. I've been to this, that they're doing this via executive order. Your reaction to this, Nan Hayworth?
Well, of course, as you and I both know, generally what is done by executive order can also be undone by executive order. As I understand it, though, there may be aspects of this action by President Biden that relate to, I think it's legislation from decades ago.
Yeah, 70 years.
That's right. That's what I was thinking, somewhere in the 60s, but I guess that's about right. 50s.
Oh my goodness.
Yes,
hold on. Set that aside for a second. That's right. Yeah, we're talking at least 60 years ago. That's crazy.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead, Nan.
Yes. No, but while it facilitates or eases the task of an executive who wants to prohibit energy exploration on federal lands, it does make it difficult for an executive to rescind those prohibitions. And it may end up requiring an act of Congress to do that. We should note, in fairness to all concerned, that President Trump himself, nobody wants to see, well, I shouldn't say maybe nobody, but many of us do not want to see drilling off of the, on the shore landscape. So President Trump himself issued a prohibition for much of the Eastern Seaboard because, of course, Eastern Seaboard folks are not enthusiastic about that. I feel the same way about wind farms. But in the Gulf, it's a much less controversial place for drilling to take place. Again, on federal lands, private lands aren't affected, but we need those federal lands. So, so it's a bad idea. It's tying hands. And what I'd like all of our listeners to bear in mind about this, Andrew, and this is, of course, something that they, being your enthusiasts, will understand anyway, I'm sure, but I didn't really until I got into Congress. 60 votes, the number 60. Yeah. So if you're going to have an act of Congress, you have to have 60 votes in the Senate. And the Republicans don't have 60 votes in the Senate. You can have a simple majority in the House, but you need a supermajority in the Senate to pass almost anything, but for a couple of special bills a year called reconciliation bills, and a lot tends to be stuffed into those. But whether or not this kind of action could be somehow placed into one of those bills, I rather doubt it. So that, Biden knows that, or the people pulling the strings on Joe Biden know that. They know we don't have 60 votes. It's unlikely that we get enough Democrat votes to make it thus. So, they've laid us pretty wicked.
That's what you're right. This is what they're trying to do. We knew stuff was going to come down the pipeline. They know that this administration is better prepared than the first Trump administration for literally hitting the ground running on day one. So they want to throw as many roadblocks out as possible before they come in to frustrate the agenda and to take them off a message in terms of what they want to do. I've put together a 35-page regulatory agenda, which stems from both the nitty-gritty stuff, the regulatory process stuff, to the very specific rulemakings and things that are out there. Let's pull it back, though, because we just talked to Scotty Hughes. I want to get your take on this. U.S.-Canada relations. Trump has a meeting with Trudeau down at Mar-a-Lago, and now Mar-a-Lago's resigned. Now Justin Trudeau's resigned.
Yes. Yay.
Yes.
That's the power of Donald Trump. And also Greenland's prime minister is musing about how it might be nice to be more independent.
Yeah.
So, a lot of moving parts here. That's the Trump magic. Look, we know that after the Mar-a-Lago meeting, which clearly was an effort to try to work out how Trudeau could mitigate President Trump's threats on tariffs, maybe cooperate better on border security, Chrystia Freeland, his finance minister, if I'm not mistaken, resigned shortly. Trudeau's finance minister resigned shortly thereafter because she just couldn't tolerate Trudeau's ineffectual appearance. So Pierre Poilievre, who is the leader of the Canadian Conservatives, because Canadians, as are we, are deeply aggrieved about all the things the left has inflicted on us.
Right.
Taxes and regulations. Andrew, to your point about your particular interest and urgings, speech prohibitions, failure to protect against the evils of anti-Semitism, anti-Westernism, anti-Americanism, and anti-Canadianism to the extent that the Canadians still represent some sort of personal freedom. It's all part of it. Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of the Conservatives, has had a large lead over Trudeau for a long time, but not yet over 50% in polling to date. And Canada has a multi-party system that is, ours is basically two parties, as we all know. Right. There are some minor ones, but in Canada, you really have to cobble together a coalition government. Although a minority party, plurality party can still rule the day. So probably the Canadian government will change for the better. Trudeau's been a disaster.
Listen, I hadn't even had a chance to talk about it today, but there was a story out of Ottawa that I know has got to drive people up the wall, banning remote car starts. Now, I know that's not really as big an issue. Maybe it's an issue somewhat down in Florida. I was going to say, you get your car started so you can get the air conditioning turned on.
Well, in Canada, it's cold. They put the heat on. That's why they start remotely. Yeah.
Listen, the remote start in my family this morning was me going out and starting. I actually loaned my younger child my car today because it has four-wheel drive and hers doesn't. But so I went and started both cars this morning in order to both my car and my wife's car on the remote start. But apparently banning that in Canada, I can't imagine that is a popular thing to do. This is what you're talking about, is
Well, yes. And why are they doing that? Because presumably because they say, well, all that idling time is adding to our carbon footprint. The same with the Biden administration. I think one of their last minute moves, and you'll know this for sure, Andrew, but I think is to endeavor to ban certain types of water heaters.
Right, the water heater rule. Yeah.
Particularly the tankless ones, or certainly to impose such strict standards, which is their shadow ban, if you will, such strict standards on emissions that people with tankless water heaters, which a lot of people use because it does save them money, won't be able to use them anymore. And the terrible thing, but fortunately something that people are starting to know more about, is that what we do in Canada, what we do in the United States, is trivial compared to what China does. Right. And all of these impositions on the more freedom-loving, we hope, nations of the West, and the more high-trust nations of the West. That's a big concept. That, to me, that's kind of my biggest takeaway from 2024. It's like, my Oxford English Dictionary term of the year is high trust. Sure. So, right, because that high trust has been completely abused by these leftist regimes and leftist forces among us. But it all helps China. It all strengthens China. To an extent, also India. India is a friendlier country for us. We know that. But still, in all, it's just, it is an absolute travesty.
Amen. Hey, Nan, how do folks find out more about the good work that you are doing?
Oh, well, occasionally, and Andrew, it's not terribly often, I post on X as @Nan Hayward. Yeah.
You can follow her at Nan, NANHAYWORTH. Nan, thank you so very much for joining us. Can't wait to see you. Hopefully, if I'm in town over the inauguration, hopefully we'll see each other.
The sooner I see you, the more delighted with the year I will be. Every good wish, and thanks.
Take care. That was Nan Hayworth. Go and check her out at Nan Hayworth on X. So yeah, let's hear from the Justin Trudeau, the good outgoing Prime Minister of Canada, the 51st state of the United States, Canada.
Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement. So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Well, there you go. It's going to be a robust, competitive, nationwide process, unlike how they replaced Joe Biden back over the summertime. We're going to get more into what. Maybe we'll get into that in a second. But it's so funny because out there on the Twitter machines, folks have been talking about the the greatest hits of Justin Trudeau. Here's a nice trip down memory lane. Justin Trudeau mansplaining or language checking a woke college student.
So that's why we came here today to ask you to also look into the policies that religious charitable organizations have in our legislation so that it can also be changed, because maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to look
we like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind.
Oh my God. I should have pulled up in relation to that. I don't know if any of you guys remember Deep Thoughts by Jack Handey on SNL. What does the word mankind mean? Well, we have to separate it into the two composite words, mank and ind. And when we learn what those words mean, we will understand the meaning of mankind. Anyway, let's go here. Speaking of all of this, we'll see if I play this well. Here is Kevin O'Leary. He is on MSNBC. No, he's on Fox News. Of course he's on Fox News. Why would he be on MSNBC? Kevin O'Leary talking about the offshore drilling ban, but also talking about his meeting with Trump at Mar-a-Lago about Canada.
With President-elect Trump on this issue.
I had two topics that I wanted to talk to him about. Number one was integrating Canada towards a North American Union for greater strength, just period. The world's a difficult place these days, and most Canadians would like to look at that opportunity without giving up their sovereignty. So low-hanging fruit would be combined currency, for example, combining the Bank of Canada with the Fed, things like that. We are the largest trading partners. And just to ask him, because this was on Saturday, to say these meetings you're having with Trudeau and finance ministers from Canada, with all due respect, sir, are a complete waste of time. This guy's going to get eradicated out of the Canadian political landscape. Give the Canadians a chance to re-elect a leader, just like you got re-elected, that has a 4-year mandate, just like you have, and let's get down to business. And I hope they didn't land on deaf ears. I think he saw the rationale in that. That was one topic. But I had another agenda item that was very important to me. And
that was that was probably the oil issue here. Let's get to this. So his other agenda item, and this is important. I had a conversation with somebody about the Kids Online Safety Act over the weekend, is the issue of TikTok and what we ought to be doing about TikTok. Kevin O'Leary had this announcement to make.
And we want to. And then on midday, 12:05, Trump will be who we have to work with to close the deal in the months ahead. So I wanted to let him know, as well as others in his cabinet, that we're doing this, and we're going to need their help.
Well, that's going to be a very interesting story to watch.
That is interesting. If Kevin O'Leary is successful in buying TikTok, because it would change the landscape of the politics there. that are at work. So let's go back to this. I want to come back to Biden and Biden over the weekend and revisit a little bit this issue of Biden's mental acumen. Because again, listen, I'm sure you're like me and you're like, thank goodness, literally we are 2 weeks out. 2 weeks from today, Biden is out of office, the end of our long national nightmare. And I mean that. Our long national nightmare of Joe Biden is over. And listen, I don't mean that in the sense of, that actually, maybe I do mean it in the sense that the sky is falling and we must tell the king. But, it's not like I have some kind of Biden derangement syndrome. It's not like I'm going to think much about Joe Biden when he leaves office. I'm not going to be thinking, something I say this, and I still want the accountability out there. I don't view him in the same way that the left views Donald Trump. He's been a policy disaster. This is what is important. And we were lied to for so long about his mental state. So I meant to play this. Well, I'll play that clip in a second. First, we had this situation over the weekend, Joe Biden singing happy birthday to a young man and flubbing his name.
And boosting Trump back in 2016. Oh. But I also think they're
the wrong one. Sorry, guys. That's on me.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
You won't notice that I.
Happy birthday to you.
You're not here anymore. Happy birthday to you. But isn't angry Joe Biden the best Joe Biden? Your tough guy Joe Biden the best Joe Biden? I think so.
My being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole goddamn life.
Can we say that on the air? Can we use the GD word on the air? Sorry if we had to dump that. Yeah, Joe Biden, he knows more GD world leaders than you've ever met in your GD life. The one thing I will miss is Dana Carvey's impression of Joe Biden, because he was spot on with this.
Okay, listen up, everyone. We couldn't have gotten here without one man, and his name is Joe Biden.
And yes, I've been saying Joe Biden the way that Maya Rudolph as Kamala Harris says Joe Biden's name, Joe Biden, because I think it works. But here is Dana Carvey.
Get on out here, Joe Biden.
Folks, that's right. A lot of people forget I'm president, including me. But guess what? And by the way, I think I did a pretty good job. I passed more bills than any president in history. But folks, we still got work to do, no joke. I'm being serious right now. Come on. And guess what? And by the way, the fact of the matter is, the rich don't pay their fair share. They gotta pay the fair share. We gotta build back better. Build back the better, the better, the better, the better. Build back the better. Can't believe it's not butter.
Thank you, Joe Biden.
There we go. That was Dana Carvey as Joe Biden. He will certainly be missed in that regard. So listen, in a moment, going to be joined by my good buddy David Safavian, formerly, I guess, still more or less at CPAC. He's got a new project out there. Going to talk to him about government overreach and the CFPB. I am Andrew Langer. This is Drew Steele on Florida Sports.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. Being a veteran, it's interwoven into your DNA. It is really the absence of the connection and the purpose that can really drive a lot of veterans to some negative thoughts. For those who are in a suicidal crisis, the window of time to save somebody's life is very short. Our duty is to protect ourselves and protect our families. And one way you can do that is store your weapons safely. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's Drew Steele, and you probably know this. I've had a music career, an EMI published songwriter in the past. I've had a top 20 Billboard hit and movie soundtracks. But I got my start right here in Southwest Florida at Soundcheck Studios with Jim Becker. I worked with Jim when he was producing big names like Castrol and Beck's Beer and other commercial clients from ABC, NBC, CBS. He's done it all. It doesn't make a difference what your musical style is. If you're talking about recording for bands or producing music, jingles, he does it all at Soundcheck Studios. Recently, he worked with RCA artist Doja Cat and also a Sony artist Flipped Arrow. A lot of great artists have made their way through Soundcheck Studios. So if you want to make your brand memorable with a jingle or maybe a commercial you want to cut, or maybe it's a band, give Soundcheck Studios a call today. 239-340-0515. That's 239-340-0515 for Soundcheck Studios.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Radical anti-hunting forces are working to ban fishing and hunting across the country. These extreme attacks on our heritage must be met. Thankfully, the International Order of T. Roosevelt is fighting back as the nation's premier organization defending our rights to fish and hunt. This April, you can step into the arena with us and join our fight in Naples, Florida. Join us at the historic Ritz-Carlton Tiburon and hear from world-class speakers including Tucker Carlson. The annual event is the best place for conservationists, anglers, hunters, and all those who want to protect the outdoors to come together, build strategies to protect our rights, and expand opportunities in the future for generations to come. Visit IOTR.org to learn more about our organization and to sign up to see Tucker in April. Visit IOTR.org to learn more about our organization and to sign up to see Tucker in April. You don't want to miss this event.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
To some, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much, but that's not true. They're testing out vowels and consonants and trying different sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on meaning, especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Learn more at autismspeaks.org.
Hey, it's Drew Steele with a game-changing offer for those ready to master their retirement journey. Look, we're going to navigate unpredictable waters in 24. An election year marked by financial uncertainty. It's crucial. You've got to have expert guidance. That's where my good friend Alfie Townsend comes in. The Southwest Florida Certified Financial Planner Professional. Alfie brings unparalleled experience and insight to the table. His latest book, Making Waves in Retirement, it's not just a guide. It's your strategic compass for navigating the financial seas with confidence. Look, with decades of experience, Alfie has created a powerful roadmap. It'll help you chart your course and make meaningful waves in your retirement. And for a limited time, you can get your hands on this book free. That's right, no cost. The book is more than just a collection of stories. It's a blueprint for achieving a prosperous and fulfilling retirement. So don't miss out. Text book to 239-747-1080 right now. It's book to 239-747-1080 and claim your free copy today. Let's make 24 the year you confidently steer towards a brighter financial future. Text book to 239-747-1080.
Now, back to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Well, we are back. I am not. We're going to be joined in just a moment by my colleague, David Safavian, who's a conservative activist, worked at the CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Coalition with me, has now got a new project out there. We're going to be talking about government overreach. Let me spend a minute. You can explain a little bit. You can explain. I can explain a little bit about who I am and where I come from. So I've worked, in addition to doing the media stuff that I do, I've worked on regulatory issues and government overreach issues for the bulk of my policy career. And I take the politics out of it. And politics is one thing. You know, politics is the blood sport. It's the political gamesmanship. I know you're not supposed to use the word in its own definition. But politics is the art of getting somebody elected or getting a piece of legislation passed, whereas public policy is supposed to be about finding solutions to problems. And I've been very interested for years in how we solve problems, but also the relationship between the policies that we create in government and how they impact individual rights. You know, let me take off my glasses for a minute. I think that works out well. Otherwise, you get the glare. For those of you who are listening, we have a video component. If you didn't know that, you can check it out. You can check me out on X at Florida's Voice. You know, on X. We're also on Rumble. We're on YouTube. So I've been wearing my glasses because I need reading glasses because I'm getting old. The point is, they had a bit of glare. So one of the things that I think about quite a bit is the relationship between government power and individual rights. I'm a constitutional absolutist. I wear that moniker proudly. I'm someone who does a lot of writing for an organization called Constituting America, which is a foundation dedicated to educating young people about the Constitution. And I've been fascinated by the Constitution since I was a kid. And really, one of my very first jobs in D.C., I was the reader and personal assistant to a blind attorney. Now, he was an environmental issues attorney. He had been President Reagan's assistant attorney general in charge of the Environment Division, but he and his wife were both very passionate about property rights issues. One of the most famous seminal property rights cases having to do with the intersection of environmental law and constitutional rights. The first criminal prosecution under the Clean Water Act, I believe, was in Florida. But it also very interested in issues having to do with federalism and the division of powers between the federal government and the states and individuals. And I came up with an axiom that every time government is expanded, individual rights are diminished. You cannot reconcile liberty with anti-liberty. It's an axiom. And joining me right now to talk about this and the weaponization of government, because every time you expand government power and that power has nebulous interpretations, that power can be abused. And joining me right now is a guy named David Safavian, formerly the executive vice president and general counsel at CPAC, my friend and colleague and mentor. David, first of all, tell us a little bit about this new project, this new venture that you have.
Well, thanks for having me on, Andrew. I am working with a group of folks from the faith community where we are engaging faith leaders to weigh in on public policy topics. It fits in with my conservatarian views of the world, which is the government that is closest to the people is the government that is most effective.
Amen.
And so we have launched an organization called unify.us. And Unify will be working with faith leaders all across the country to The old line is they will see the light when they feel the heat, and our goal is to bring the heat.
So let's go here, because you and I have had a lot of conversations about expansive government power, and I've offered up the thesis that if Donald Trump is an authoritarian, he's an extraordinarily bad authoritarian, because he's the only authoritarian in world history who's ever tried to shrink the size and scope of his power. You and I both know that the government power, especially federal power, can be abused. Talk about this case you and I have been discussing. We have an op-ed we've drafted. It hasn't been published yet, but let's talk about the situation with the CFPB.
Sure. Let's start with something everyone can understand, which is you put a goldfish in a bowl, and the goldfish is going to grow to the size of the bowl, right? And the bowl is the constraint on the goldfish.
Right.
The problem you have with the bureaucracy is that they don't understand that they're in a bowl. They grow, they look for every opportunity to expand their power. And let's be candid. Most people in civil service tend to lean left. Why is that? Well, I think part of the reason is conservatives go in, they learn something, and then they go out and they make a living off of that knowledge. Whereas liberals tend to go into government and they thrive on the power. They love the power and they stay there forever. So the longer we have a government, the more left-leaning it becomes. A few years ago, back in 2010, actually, Elizabeth Warren had this brilliant idea. Let's create yet another organization to regulate the financial services industry. We already have the Federal Trade Commission that looks at consumer protection. We've got the Justice Department that looks at fraud. We've got every state AG that's got powers to go after bad actors. But Elizabeth Warren, for her, that was not enough. So she had this idea and she pitched it, and lo and behold, every Democrat and almost every Republican, every Democrat voted for it, and almost every Republican voted against it to create the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The interesting thing about the CFPB is that it was designed to be insulated from Congress.
Right.
It was designed to avoid accountability. And so the CFPB doesn't have to go to Congress for its appropriations. And they claim that their director can't be fired by presidents. It is the perfect example of a swampy entity. People get in there and then they expand their power. Well, we have seen the CFPB, the latest is my favorite, quite frankly, and it's not the case that I wrote an op-ed on, but it's similar to that. And the latest is just a week ago, the CFPB issued a regulation, and the regulation says, hey, we're going to limit bounce fees when you overdraft, when you have a check overdraft. Now, nobody likes bounce fees, right? But what they've done is they have substituted their own judgment for the judgment of businesses, and they've set limits on bounce fees. Okay, we can debate about whether or not a $5 or $35 fee is the right amount, but the company should do that. But here's the kicker. The CFPB doesn't have jurisdiction over checking accounts.
Right.
They have jurisdiction over loans. So what did they do? They read through the law and they interpreted loan to me, or they interpreted a bounce fee to be a loan that you have to pay back. And that's their jurisdictional hook. And we see this all across government, man. We see this at every agency where they...
Well, right. I mean, the example I like to use is that the Clean Water Act specifically exempted traditional farming activities, and but you could still regulate the runoff from mountain ranges. And somebody at the EPA said, well, you know something, let's declare farm furrows to be mini mountain ranges, and therefore we can regulate. Now, thankfully, that never came to pass, but someone at least had that brilliant interpretation. And what's funny is, right, not that we need to go down the road of Chevron and deference, but in the wake of this Supreme Court case last year, Loper Bright, which overturned this idea of whatever crazy interpretation a regulatory agency has can be allowed to stand, Elizabeth Warren said, no, I want to, stop corporate capture. So Congress is going to pass a law giving agencies this deference so that, we can't go back. I mean, this is not the way the founders intended it, is it, David?
No, it's not. I mean, the founders intended for the president to name officers. The officers were responsible to the president, and if they overreached, the president was held accountable. We now have a situation where, at least in theory, under Elizabeth Warren's reasoning, there is no accountability for these out-of-control bureaucrats in the CFPB. And they are making new laws without the legislature. It violates Article 1 of the Constitution. And it's time we put that genie back in the bottle. Loper Bright allows us to do that. It gives us a hammer on which we can really limit the size and scope of bureaucratic government.
And listen, and it's amazing, you know, as you and I were talking about over the weekend, Harriet Hageman from out in Wyoming, she's now in charge of a task force to look at just that under the auspices of the Republican Study Committee. In fact, I got a request into to interview the head of the RSC now. But let's talk about this specific case with regards to the CFPB and their overreach. Tell us about it.
So the CFPB decides one day that they don't like companies that put lawyers together with debtors to work out the debt solutions, right?
Right.
Well, there's a company out there called Strategic Financial Solutions, and SFS does exactly that. They get the debtor connected with lawyers, and they work out a way where the debtor can get out from under the burdens of debt and get a fresh start without having to go down the road of bankruptcy. That's all great. The CFPB decided they didn't like that. They didn't like it for a number of progressive reasons. And so they decided that they were going to go after this little company. What did they do? They looked at the laws and they said, well, we can work through the Telemarketing Fraud Act, the Telemarketing Act.
Yeah.
And their goal, they said, well, the Telemarketing Act doesn't really deal with face-to-face conversations, but there were phone calls made along the way, so we're gonna take a shot at that. And so they reinterpreted the Telemarketing Act to include any conversations that may have been had face-to-face, even if, but using it as a hook that maybe prior conversations were, they made a phone call to have an appointment.
Hold on, David. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking that if it's the Telemarketing Act, it's either going to be the marketing side of it, which is the FTC, or the tele side of it, which would be the FCC, not the CFPB. Though I guess if you're talking about refinancing debt, I mean, some of this comes back to this idea that the progressives want to eliminate the concept of assessing risk in these transactions, and they want government to intercede, right? This is the idea of making post offices the payday lenders of record. And imagine the situation in which all of a sudden the post office can start handing out untraceable sums of cash to people. What could possibly go wrong with that, especially around election time? But this is what it's about, isn't it? It's about sort of getting government or getting businesses out of the business of assessing risk.
They love moral hazard, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have any downside risk, you're going to engage in the most risky behavior possible. And what will happen if the government takes on that risk? We all pay for it. So, for example, in the checking account example that I gave you, I haven't bounced a check since I've been in college. I haven't bounced a check in 40 years, right? I'm going to pay higher fees now because the CFPB has decided that they want to make it under the auspices of fairness. They want to lower rates, particularly on the bad actors. That everybody bounces a check. You're going to pay $35, you're going to pay $25, whatever. But why should I incur that financial cost? But they want everybody to pay the same thing. It's classic Marxism.
The flip side, of course, is the thousands of people, tens of thousands of people that are going to lose their bank accounts because they won't be able to afford these fees. They will become the unbanked. Every time they do this, more people are forced out of the system. And which is, again, an insane way of doing this.
Well, I'll bet a bunch of the people listening and watching right now have noticed that the concept of free checking has largely disappeared.
Right.
For people that don't carry $5,000 in their checking account, they pay a user fee. Why is that? Because the CFPB in other decisions have larded on regulatory costs, and banks have said, we can't afford it, so we're going to do away with free checking. This is exactly what happens when bureaucrats get involved and there's no accountability. They make rules from no basis of operational understanding, and the costs get larded onto everybody else. And that is precisely the problem with the bureaucracy.
Well, David, how do folks find out more about the good work that you're doing, the work you've done at CPAC, continue to do with CPAC, and the good work you're doing with Unify?
Yep. So I work with CPAC, work for CPAC. And you can go to our website, which is conservative.org, and there's lots of all the good things that we're doing on the regulatory front. You and I get to work on regulations together. We also have a little conference that we have every February that people might want to watch or go participate in. And then our new organization is called Unify.us. We just launched it. We don't have a website up. It's that fresh, but we will in the coming days, and we look forward to working with everybody.
Take care, David. Listen, best of luck to you. Thank you for coming on. Happy. That was David Sababian. I'm Andrew Lang.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Babes, what are you doing?
What? I'm just mowing the lawn.
No, it's blazing hot and dry out here. Don't you remember? Smokey Bear says.
Avoid using power equipment when it's windy or dry.
Where'd you learn this?
Oh, it's on
SmokeyBear.com with many other wildfire prevention tips.
Right. Thanks, honey bear.
Because remember, only you can prevent wildfires.
Brought to you by the USDA Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
All right, son. Time to put out this campfire.
Dad, we learned about this in school.
Oh, did you now? Okay. What's first?
Smokey Bear said to.
First drown it with a bucket of water, then stir it with a shovel.
Wow. You sound just like him.
Then he said.
If it's still warm, then do it again.
Where can I learn all this?
It's all on SmokeyBear.com with other wildfire prevention tips, because only you can prevent wildfires.
Brought to you by the USDA Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
I'll trust water bottles and a flashlight to save the day, but I'll be proved wrong.
With a tornado approaching, I'll realize that I like a wheelchair-accessible shelter.
When the floodwaters rise, I'll be up in the attic with 20 cans of beans. It's a recipe for disaster.
let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council. Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
when the storm rolls in, my time to find a pet-friendly evacuation center will have run out.
The scorching heat wave will leave me powerless to cool my insulin.
I'll face a hurricane without meds. Now that's a tough pill to swallow.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver. And we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today. We're with Liam after his 4th military move, when being new is starting to get old. We're with Tara during the holidays, when she misses home the most. We're with all service members and their families who need connection, comfort, and a home away from home. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
Now, back to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Well, welcome back, everybody. I am Andrew Langer, in for Drew today, in for Drew tomorrow. So this is what I was talking about in terms of what we were talking about with David. the issue of regulation, the cost of regulation, is central to the work that I do for CPAC. It's something I'm very passionate about. Every time government grows, individual rights are diminished, and one of the problems you get is that these powers can be weaponized against political enemies. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined by a guy named Adam Lovinger, who's written a book about this called Insider Threat. I did a long-form interview with him today about this issue and his own experiences in the government dealing with these things. But, I want to go here. We've got this situation with we heard from Kevin O'Leary earlier, but let's start with this issue of the oil and gas drilling situation and the chaos that's being fomented. Here is Fox's announcement of this executive order today.
President Biden announcing an executive order that permanently bans new offshore drilling along most of the U.S. coastline. The executive order is drafted in a way that would make it harder for incoming President Trump to reverse.
Yeah, this is pretty big, considering that about 15% of our oil and gas comes from offshore. That's going to make it really hard to get this drill, baby, drill agenda, which President Trump has pushed. And the way it's crafted, as you mentioned, it's going to be really hard to overturn. I'm sure Trump will, but then it will immediately get thrown into the courts. And Biden has appointed 250 or so judges, and so it will be in a favorable court, and this will give environmental groups a lot of fodder to raise money and to do their activism.
Well, I think what's going to happen, it will go through, it'll be challenged, but the reality is that the burden is on the challengers to make the case as to why this executive order should take precedence over the regulatory process, the formalized process that's out there, or, God forbid, some kind of piece of legislation that does this. Now, I have been down this road. One of the things I worked on last year, early on in my tenure running the Center for Regulatory Freedom, was a de facto way of doing this. Nan Hayworth mentioned this with regards to the natural gas water heaters and this rule that was, finalized at the end of last week. That at the end of last week, it was announced that the EPA was putting new standards out there on water heaters, tankless water heaters, that would essentially make the vast majority of them illegal in America. You set the standard so high that you create essentially a de facto ban. So last summer, the Biden administration tried to do this through their Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. It used to be called OCS, which was sort of the Bureau for Offshore Drilling, and they tried to do this in a de facto way by making it very hard for the independent oil producers to drill, to put these onerous standards out there. So that it was going to make it much more expensive for them to drill, and so they would go out of business, which would ironically lead to consolidation, which the Democrats are supposedly against. That's a huge problem. That's the same thing that goes along with what they're doing with the banking situation, right? When you raise the fees, right, you're going to drive these smaller banks out of business and make it so that there's consolidation. Anyway, the next hour, Brandon Whitechurch is going to join us, and we've got.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
It's 4 a.m., Monday, and you're literally sucking baby snot through a tube because she's congested. Man, that's love. And if you love her that much, love her enough to make sure she's buckled in the right car seat. To make sure your child's in the right seat for their age and size, visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Show them you love them. Keep them safe. Visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. You let him try violin because you love him. And if you love him that much, love him enough to make sure he's buckled up and in the back seat. Find out more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it. No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Talk to your kid about vaping. Visit talkaboutvaping.org.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele. Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Congratulations on your show. Congratulations on your new show. Big deal, huh?
That's why shows like yours are so important.
We have an independent county elected sheriff that's the head of law enforcement in Jacksonville/Duval County. And I know how to work toward making this city safe.
We can't be shy about speaking on things such as faith and politics. We have to remember, in a free society, the public square belongs to all of us.
I'm not interested in North Florida looking like Orlando or Miami. I love where we live, but I think that good jobs means that people that live in this district can stay in this district.
Fishing and hunting is funding a large part of your conservation projects in Florida, and we want to make sure that those are forever preserved.
And the problem with this industry at this point is that they actually target our youth. You can see it in their marketing strategies, where it's bright colors, fun names.
And that's going to be endlessly litigated.
Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Hey, it's Drew Steele with an offer that can help steer your retirement in the right direction. Look, we're going to navigate the turbulent waters of 24 with this financial uncertainties and shifting tides. Having expert guidance is more crucial than ever, and that's where my good friend Alfie Townsend comes in. As Southwest Florida's certified financial planner professional, Alfie brings expert knowledge and insight. His latest book, Making Waves in Retirement, isn't just a guide. It's your navigational compass for mastering the financial seas. With decades of experience, Alfie has crafted a powerful roadmap to help you chart your course and make impactful waves in your retirement. Look, for a limited time, you can claim your free copy of this valuable guide. That's right, no cost. This book is more than just pages. It's your blueprint for a prosperous and fulfilling retirement. Don't let this opportunity drift by. Text book to 239-747-1080. That's book to 239-747-1080. Look, secure your free copy today. Let's make 24 the year you confidently navigate towards a brighter financial future. Text book to 239-747-1080.
I've been dipping snuff for well over 30 years. You know, I could wake up in the morning and have a weird lump in my gums. Guess it's like playing Russian roulette, really. I would love grandchildren. And if by quitting it extends my life some, I would gladly lay it down.
Visit tobaccofreeflorida.com to find free resources to help you quit your way.
Today, push harder, push forward, push vigorously.
There are things that I am hiding from people that I'm trying to inspire.
You can do whatever you set your mind to.
I feel like a hypocrite a lot of the times.
Don't give up on yourself ever.
Smoking, I hide it because I'm ashamed of it. I want to get out of the shadow. I want to show people there is light away from the darkness. I am going to quit.
Visit tobaccofreeflorida.com to find free resources to help you quit your way.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today. We're with Liam after his 4th military move, when being new is starting to get old. We're with Tara during the holidays, when she misses home the most. We're with all service members and their families who need connection, comfort, and a home away from home. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
It's always a good day when you hear from TJ Meister from the Floor Meisters in Naples, 6281 Naples Boulevard, 239-596-4964. All right, let's see what's going on with TJ today. How are you, TJ?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Drew. It's good to hear you on the radio.
Thanks, TJ. Appreciate it. All right, Floor Meisters, what do we got going on?
Well, we're just keeping up with the demand for Core-Tech. Just had to order a truck and bring it in from the West Coast of the United States to keep up with all the needs and wants of the people of Southwest Florida. Somebody doesn't have it, give me a call. I probably do.
Why do people love Core-Tech so much?
Well, it's waterproof, kid-proof, pet-proof. So if you got a pool, no problem. If you got a dog, no problem. If you got a husband that spills, no problem.
You got to call the Floor Meisters in Naples. What do you need? Tile, carpet, Core-Tech, 6281 Naples Boulevard in Naples, 596-4964. Give them a call, 596-4964 for the Floor Meisters.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just got to hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
Hey, you got this. Just breathe. Hey, we're pretty good.
yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Thank you for waking us all up out here, for all you do. And
thank you for giving us the voice.
For being out there helping keep the constitutional republic. I want to thank you for
your support for veterans in the military.
Educating us.
Standing up for conservatism.
Giving us the truth.
Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Welcome back, everybody. I am Andrew Langer. Drew today, Drew tomorrow. If you want to join the conversation, Eight 866-588-8303, 866-588-8303. You can also message me on Facebook, facebook.com/Andrew Langer Show. You can follow me on Twitter, at me on Twitter, at Andrew_Langer, Langer. You know, check me out. I do some podcasting. I do lots of radio work. I run the Center for Regulatory Freedom at CPAC. Going to be joined in a couple of minutes by Brandon Weichert. He's a defense expert. He's a big fan of Florida's Voice, so we're always happy to have him on. Oh, and let's not forget, later on in this hour, we've got an extra special super secret guest joining us for a Florida's Voice exclusive. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that as well. So listen, talking about this issue of drilling, and let me set this thesis up. In fact, this will be a good jumping off point for our conversation with Brandon as well. So set the Wayback Machine. And I know all of you know, you're all fans of Rocky and Bullwinkle as I was. We know about Mr. Peabody and his pet boy Sherman and the Wayback Machine. Set the Wayback Machine back to 2016, 2017. And nobody thought that Donald Trump was going to win. Certainly not the Democrats. And they were doing whatever they could to make sure that Donald Trump did win. They were doing everything they could to frustrate Donald Trump in the case that they did win. Let's remember the very famous email between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, in which they talked about creating an insurance policy in case Donald Trump was elected. And the idea was they would foment as much chaos as possible to frustrate Donald Trump should he become president of the United States. I had this conversation today with Adam Lovinger, who's joining us tomorrow, the author of Insider Threat, talking about the intelligence community and their role in all of this and their role vis-a-vis him. And one of the things that had happened was, because Trump and Team Trump were relative political neophytes, with the exception of a few people, there was a lot of chaos that they were facing when they came into office. And the left and the folks in the establishment took advantage of that. Well, that's not the case the second time around. Donald Trump and Team Trump is much, much more savvy about what needs to get done and how they ought to go about doing it between now. And as we talked about with Scotty Hughes in the first hour of the show, there are more people ironically willing to go in and do this work now than there were the first time around. It's been demonstrated that you can work for Team Trump and survive and thrive in point of fact here. So now the left has to foment chaos in a whole host of other ways. And so, yes, we've always had a flurry of midnight regulations on the part of leftist administrations trying to frustrate and stymie the economy before you go in. Very rarely do you see whole segments of the economy upended through the use of executive orders that can be overturned down the road. But it's much, much more complicated in this case, given how the Biden administration has worded it. Well, listen, joining us right now to talk about chaos and the messes that are being left behind is Brandon Weichert. Brandon, I've got to turn and read your bio here, so stay with me for a second. Brandon Weichert is the author of A Disaster of Our Own Making, How the West Lost Ukraine. He's a geopolitical analyst and author of Winning Space, How America Remains a Superpower, Biohack, China's Race to Control Life, and the Shadow War, Iran's Quest for Supremacy. He's an educator, travels the country lecturing leaders in the U.S. military, academia, et cetera, et cetera. He's with the National Interest. Yeah. I could go on. If we do the long form podcast, and obviously you play the violin and the piano, or somebody in your family.
It is actually my oldest daughter who's sitting off screen here doing her homework, and my middle daughter does the piano. So my oldest does the violin, and my middle does the piano.
Yeah, there you go. Do you have any musical acumen yourself? I have none.
I played the drums growing up, but that's just because I like to bang on things more than having any musical. My wife is the classically trained pianist, not me.
Oh, there you go. How lucky you are.
I married up.
Play the piano. Yeah, as did I, though my wife doesn't play any instruments beyond the clarinet. My kids have gotten, my younger one has gotten some of that acumen. Anyway, neither here nor there. It's just, you've got an interesting background. A layout, visually background there. So Brandon, I raised this issue of essentially the Biden administration leaving the world much, much more chaotic than they found it. And some of this is intentional, some of this is not. And it does matter to an extent whether or not it's intentional, but the reality is, either way, it is what it is, isn't it? We have this situation. Talk about how things are more complicated on the geopolitical realm.
Well, in the geopolitical realm, and of course, it all kind of feeds in together these days, economics and sort of the domestic policy. But in the geopolitical realm, it looks to me like the Biden regime, and that's what it is. It is a regime, not an administration. The Biden regime is setting fires to as many parts of the world as possible, as part of a larger effort to stymie the incoming Trump administration from being able to affect the kinds of changes they want. Notably, it's the two Ps. Trump wants peace and prosperity. That's it. And they are complicating that at every turn around the world. Notably, I don't know if you saw this, but over the weekend, and I'm no fan of the Iranian regime, but over the weekend, there was real talk that Biden was meeting with Sullivan and Blinken to discuss bombing Iranian nuclear sites.
Wow.
Now you remember, remember General Milley said that one of his great fears on January 6th of 2021, it's the anniversary today, was that, Trump was going to try to start a war with Iran to stop the transit. Well, this is literally Joe Biden is doing that, it looks like.
This gets into the issue of projection. I had this conversation with Adam Lovinger, who's going to join us tomorrow to talk about that very issue.
His book is great, by the way. We share the same publisher. He's got a great book.
And that's just it. Thank you. It's going to be a fascinating conversation as this one certainly is. Because it is. Sorry, I lost my train of thought about this issue of chaos. Let's tell you what. So I can pick up the train once again. Tell us about the latest book, and how we've got to where we are with Ukraine.
Yeah, so basically, as the title suggests, it is a disaster of our own making. And basically, I go back in the book. And I worked in government for years, and one of the issue areas was sort of that Ukraine-Russia region. That was part of my sort of area of focus, both in government and then in academia. But basically, it's a disaster of our own making, because at the end of the Cold War, when the Soviet Union collapsed, we had a pristine opportunity throughout the 1990s to actually turn Russia for the first time ever into a friend of the West, into a partner, into a doorway that would allow for Western power projection into Eurasia, which is the part of the world that Russia sits atop of. But instead, we decided at that point to double down on NATO expansion. We decided to embrace this notion that Russia will always be an enemy. It must always be contained. And therefore, we must seek to collapse the post-Soviet Russian state. And that's why the issue of Sevastopol, the Crimean Peninsula in Ukraine in particular, is really sort of the hotspot for all of the crisis over Ukraine geopolitically. Because if the Americans and NATO can push the Russians out of Sevastopol, they'll be able to remove one of only 4 warm water ports in Russia. And the other one, by the way, is Tartus in Syria, and the Russians just lost that because the Turks, what they did in Syria. So there's, and I kind of get into the history of that, and I talk about how basically the last 30 years led to this moment in which we are staring down the possibility of nuclear World War III with Russia over Ukraine. And by the way, none of this, and I show this in the book, none of this would have happened had Trump actually been able to be sworn in as president again on January 2021, which of course you and I think know by now was stolen from him.
Well, it's amazing to me, right? And we're talking with Brandon Weichert. He's got this great book out, A Disaster of Our Own Making: How the West Lost Ukraine. I was a Soviet studies major in college, and have been tracking these issues for years. How Joe Biden and Joe Biden's son's relationship with Ukraine and the power structure in Ukraine led to a series of sort of missed opportunities in the mid 2010s. The opportunities there, whether purposeful or not. We had this famous moment in the 2012 election in which Barack Obama castigated Mitt Romney by saying, the Cold War called and it wants its foreign policy back. Of course, far be it for me to say Mitt Romney was right, but, Mitt Romney was at least right, in that score. I mean, it really is a situation. This is where I wanted to go. Now I have the train of thought back.
Well, yeah.
Hold on. I was at a debate a couple of weeks ago between folks from the Bulwark, the Never Trump Republican organization.
Yeah, they love
me.
And
Nick Gillespie and Matt Welch from Reason Magazine.
Yeah.
Now, the libertarians have always raised all kinds of alarms and have been less than helpful in terms of not wanting to embrace the more libertarian aspects of the Trump agenda. But at this event, I was markedly surprised that Nick Gillespie, who I believe is editor-at-large, is former editor-in-chief of Reason Magazine, he said, I'm actually keeping an open mind towards. He dared utter in front of the Bulwark, I dare to keep an open mind because Donald Trump wants to bring peace and prosperity. He wants to make the world less chaotic. That to me was a really hopeful sign if we could get more of the libertarians on board. I mean, talk about that in this issue of sort of U.S. adventurism abroad.
Well, I think and in fact, I talked about this in the book as well, which I call them the cabal. It's really the neoconservative, neoliberal establishment, the uniparty that's run Washington, D.C. since at least the end of the Cold War. You could make an argument it's been a lot longer, but just for the time frame of the book, from the end of the Cold War until the present, this cabal of policy people, think tankers, media people, mid-level bureaucrats like Victoria Nuland over at the State Department, who she's no longer there, but she was there for long enough. All these people, basically, they may have been Democrat, they may have been Republican. It didn't really matter because they shared this worldview, which was open borders, quote unquote free trade, and military adventurism in the name of human rights and democracy, whatever that may be. And that was sort of the post-Cold War American empire, really. That was how we went about doing things. And for a period of time, we were able to do that because there was no real challenger. But by the 2000s, those days were done. They didn't get the memo, and they kept pushing. And so it started out in the Middle East, And it ballooned out until we basically destabilized the entire region and actually handed it over to the Islamists. And now the big prize has always been collapsing Russia, getting Russia into a, quote, democratic state, or collapsing Russia into 4 or 5 smaller countries, because the end game is being able to exploit those natural resources, $11 trillion, it's believed, worth of natural resources in Russia that right now are closed off to Western multinational firms. And that's what this is all about.
It's interesting, right? Because if they're trying to do that, then again, they're going about it in the dumbest way possible.
Oh, it's stupid.
It's like, again, sort of as I was getting my degree, and I have a degree in Soviet studies, and the Soviet Union disappeared in the middle of my junior year. So I'm writing stuff, which of course, because we don't know what's going on, I'm writing stuff about how we're talking to the wrong people, where we're sort of propping up the same kind of, strong men who don't know how to actually run a free market economy. What we should be talking to are the folks who actually know how markets work, and getting them invested in this. I mean, right. If you're going to go and do this, then you got to talk to the folks that are in these various regions, but that's exactly it. It's the issue of cronyism and the relationship between cronyism and international affairs. I come back to, I haven't talked about this with anybody today, one of the great failures of sort of looking back. Hillary Clinton gets a Presidential Medal of Freedom over the weekend, right? And nobody is peeling back the issue of what was happening at the State Department under Hillary Clinton's watch, the interplay between her aides who were, working for Teneo Holdings at the time, the clients of Teneo Holdings doing business with the State Department, and those clients giving millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation. And nobody seems to want to peel this back at all. So, and it all comes down to the propping up of these regimes, because these clients can make massive sums of money on this.
And I do mention, for instance, everybody knows about Uranium One during Clinton's time as Secretary of State, but what many don't know about is the famous selling off of American hypersonic missile technology to the Russians in the form of dual use. So it was supposed to be for civilian purposes, but as you know, this is a dual use technology. And so Hillary Clinton authorized the sale to Sokolovo, which is their sort of Silicon Valley out in Russia. And it was clearly a military operation masquerading as a civilian operation. Hillary didn't care. They didn't do due diligence. And so this is why now today, the Russians actually are ahead of us in terms of working reliable arsenals that they can use in warfare of various hypersonic weapons, from the Oreshnik, which they deployed a few weeks ago in Ukraine as a signal to us, but also they've got hypersonic cruise missiles, which are now on their Yasin B class nuclear submarines, which means they can park right off the coast of the U.S. and launch hypersonic cruise missiles en masse, and we have no active air defense against them. And so that's all because Hillary gave them an infusion of hypersonic research and development they said was being used for civilian purposes, of course was not being used for that. And so for all the people out there who say that Donald Trump is a Russian spy, I don't remember this ever happening under Trump.
Right, and that's exactly it. The reality was something very different. Again, Adam Levinger talks about the issue of projection. We'll get more into this tomorrow. Let me ask you this, Brandon. We're talking with Brandon Reichert. He's the author of A Disaster of Our Own Making, How the West Lost Ukraine. He's with the National Interest. What do you think the end game is, right? We're now, what is it? We're not 3 years into this. Are we 3 years into this war come March?
It's actually, you know what? I made the mistake on Twitter, and believe me, all the NAFO bots are trying to correct me.
Sorry.
It's actually 4 years. It's hard to believe we're going in on 4 years.
Crazy. Okay, so we're entering the fourth year here. Yeah, that's right. So what's the end game? I mean, obviously, Trump's coming in. There's going to be a true reset of things. What do you see as the solution here?
So it looks like a colleague of mine, Stephen Bryan, who writes at the Substack Weapons and Strategy, it's a wonderful Substack. He used to work in the Pentagon for many years. He's one of the old timers. He reported on December 26th that a Russian diplomatic plane landed at Dulles. It was the first flight of its kind in years. And his suspicion is that this was a backdoor move to start talks with the State Department, yes, but moreover, they were probably likely talking with elements of the Trump transition team, setting up potential meeting spots for when Trump is president in a few weeks to actually have Putin and Trump meet to discuss peace. I think we're going to get a peace or ceasefire at least in the first 100 days. And from there, it's going to ripple out. Peace is going to ripple out. What's going to happen is the Russians will be sated because we're going to divide Ukraine up. They're going to get the parts they've held for at least the last decade, Crimea, the Donbass. The western part will be a rump state with a guarantee from us likely that we will not ever absorb it into NATO, which is another sticking issue. And then we can move from there. The Russians will probably take a step back. The Iranian issue will be cooled because the Russians will not be wanting to upset the apple cart too much with the new peace deal. They're going to want to rebuild. The North Koreans will be more amenable to resuming peace talks with Donald Trump. We could have peace there. And then also the Chinese might not be so close to Russia because they're not going to be united by that Ukraine war, which will be over, I think, in the first 100 days of Trump's administration.
And at the same time, the Russians have got to be very concerned about the possibility of, even with Joe Biden shutting down offshore oil drilling and making it difficult to re-engage it, of the U.S. once again dominating the global oil markets and bottoming out the Russian economy. I mean, that's the simplest part of this. I mean, real quick. So I went to a very progressive high school up in New York, and that school sends down every other year a group of students to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, up in D.C. And I always go and talk to them, because I always want to just, get them to think a little bit more empirically about things. And these are students who are coming down to study. I'm using air quotes for those of you who can't see, study the right. And one of the things I was talking about, well, how many of you think that climate change is an existential threat? And a bunch of them raised their hands. How many of you think that Russia invading Ukraine is an existential threat? And a bunch of them raised their hands. Okay, so for those of you who think that, that both of these are an existential threat, how many of you think that if America ought to start drilling massively to bottom out the Russian oil economy? And a handful of them, you could see the wheels turning in their head. A handful of them, but something, we need to do that. But of course, there was a handful like, no, climate change, far more of an existential threat than Russia. So this is
how the Russians have funded their war effort, was through in fact, when they invaded Georgia in 2008, people forget, the price of oil up until that point was the highest it had ever been. And so they were able to use that for their war effort. And so if you really are worried about Russia, you should be very pro-domestic drilling, 100%. Which of course most of the people with Ukrainian flags in their bios on Twitter can't stand drilling in oil. So, this is the types of people who are leading us off the abyss.
Right. Brandon, how do folks find out more about the good work you're doing? How do they find more about your book?
Well, you can go on to Amazon or wherever books are sold. It's at Barnes & Noble. It's at all of them. But usually Amazon is where you can find all 4 of my books. And then you can follow me on Twitter, X, at WeTheBrandon.
We the Brandon. I think I'm following you on X. If I'm not, I need to be. Brandon, listen, take care. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Happy New Year.
Yep. Happy New Year to you, Brandon Weisshirt, National Interest. We the Brandon on Twitter or X. Oh my goodness, this is exciting stuff here. So let me get back to this issue of the offshore drilling. Here we have Biden. We have the statement online. Here is Donald Trump. He went on the Hugh Hewitt show this morning to talk about it.
Done. I see it just came over that Biden has banned all oil and gas drilling across 625 million.
Trump sounds like he's got more of a cold than I do. I mean, oh boy. Anyway, here he's continuing.
Million acres of U.S. coastal territory. It's ridiculous. I'll unban it immediately. I will unban it. I have the right to unban it immediately. What's he doing? Why is he doing it? We have something that nobody else has. I mean, nobody has to the extent we have it, and it'll be more by the time we finish because I'll be able to expand. We're going to expand our country, and it'll be more. We have oil and gas, and whether you manufacture widgets or gadgets or whatever you happen to be doing, some countries have to work very hard to do that.
Well, there you go. That was Donald Trump here. Listen, when we come back, we got our super secret guest joining us. I am Andrew Lang.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. Being a veteran, it's interwoven into your DNA. It is really the absence of the connection and the purpose that can really drive a lot of veterans to some negative thoughts. For those who are in a suicidal crisis, the window of time to save somebody's life is very short. Our duty is to protect ourselves and protect our families. And one way you can do that is store your weapons safely. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's Drew Steele, and you probably know this. I've had a music career, an EMI published songwriter in the past. I've had a top 20 Billboard hit and movie soundtracks. But I got my start right here in Southwest Florida at Soundcheck Studios with Jim Becker. I worked with Jim when he was producing big names like Castrol and Beck's Beer and other commercial clients from ABC, NBC, CBS. He's done it all. It doesn't make a difference what your musical style is. If you're talking about recording for bands or producing music, jingles, he does it all at Soundcheck Studios. Recently, he worked with RCA artist Doja Cat and also a Sony artist Flipton Arrow. A lot of great artists have made their way through Soundcheck Studios. So if you want to make your brand memorable with a jingle or maybe a commercial you want to cut, or maybe it's a band, give Soundcheck Studios a call today. 239-340-0515. That's 239-340-0515 for Soundcheck Studios.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Radical anti-hunting forces are working to ban fishing and hunting across the country. These extreme attacks on our heritage must be met. Thankfully, the International Order of T. Roosevelt is fighting back as the nation's premier organization defending our rights to fish and hunt. This April, you can step into the arena with us and join our fight in Naples, Florida. Join us at the historic Ritz-Carlton Tiburon and hear from world-class speakers, including Tucker Carlson. The annual event is the best place for conservationists, anglers, hunters, and all those who want to protect the outdoors to come together, build strategies to protect our rights, and expand opportunities in the future for generations to come. Visit IOTR.org to learn more about our organization and to sign up to see Tucker in April. Visit IOTR.org to learn more about our organization and to sign up to see Tucker in April. You don't want to miss this event.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
To some, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much, but that's not true. They're testing out vowels and consonants and trying different sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on meaning, especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Learn more at autismspeaks.org.
Hey, it's Drew Steele with a game-changing offer for those ready to master their retirement journey. Look, we're going to navigate unpredictable waters in 24, an election year marked by financial uncertainty. It's crucial. You've got to have expert guidance. That's where my good friend Alfie Townsend comes in. The Southwest Florida certified financial planner professional, Alfie brings unparalleled experience and insight to the table. His latest book, Making Waves in Retirement, it's not just a guide. It's your strategic compass for navigating the financial seas with confidence. Look, with decades of experience, Alfie has created a powerful roadmap. It'll help you chart your course and make meaningful waves in your retirement. And for a limited time, you can get your hands on this book free. That's right, no cost. The book is more than just a collection of stories. It's a blueprint for achieving a prosperous and fulfilling retirement. So don't miss out. Text book to 239-747-1080 right now. It's book to 239-747-1080 and claim your free copy today. Let's make 24 the year you confidently steer towards a brighter financial future. Text book to 239-747-1080.
Now, back to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
We are back. I am Andrew Langer. Today, we're going to be joined in just a couple of minutes by a very special guest. Some big news is broken. I'm still going to tease it. I know the news has already been broken, but I'm gonna still hold off for just a couple of minutes. Very excited for this guest to join us. So we're talking about the issue of drilling. We're talking about the issue of executive orders. And let me play this. Here is James Blair. He is the deputy chief of staff, the incoming deputy chief of staff for Donald Trump. And he's talking about hitting the ground running here.
So day one. What's on the agenda for day one, the afternoon of his inauguration?
By the way, that's Trey Gowdy interviewing him, former member of Congress Trey Gowdy.
Hey, thanks for having me, Trey. Look, day one is going to be action-packed. What you will see is the president work quickly and aggressively to implement the policy that he campaigned on, especially those that can be done through executive action. So these are things like securing the border, unleashing American energy, getting wokeness out of the military and restoring it to being the world's most lethal and well-trained fighting force, getting men out of women's sports. Those are the types of things that you will see President Trump focus on in the earliest days of his administration.
And to that end, that's why I have and others have put together these regulatory agendas. Let me explain that for a second for the uninitiated. When we talk about executive branch action, when we talk about regulation, so what happens is that, at least in a perfect world under the Constitution, Congress passes a law. And it's up to these executive branch agencies to interpret and enforce the law. And they create these things called regulations. And there's a whole process by which the statutes become regulations. We were talking about this with David Safavian earlier. The example I like to use is Congress passes the Clean Water Act in 1972. And they say you can't pollute a navigable water of the United States. Well, Congress left it up to the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers to determine what pollution is, and what is the act of polluting, and what is a navigable water of the United States. And the problem is they've been given so much deference, so much leeway over the course of the last 50 years that all of a sudden a dry patch of desert sand, or in the case of O.C. Mills in Florida, essentially a drainage ditch, can be considered a navigable water of the United States. O.C. Mills went to jail for that. Now, thankfully, those interpretations when it comes to the Clean Water Act have changed over the years, but there is still plenty of other interpretations that are out there that have either been upheld under this crazy doctrine called Chevron deference that was overturned by the Supreme Court last year, or even not so crazy, nevertheless expansive and onerous. So a lot of the work that I do on a daily basis deals with the regulatory burden. Some of it talks about the time burden, how much time it takes you to deal with federal regulations. A lot of it has to do with the economic cost of regulation, because don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Regulations are designed to cost Americans money. That's the nature of it. You raise the cost of doing the bad thing, so it makes more economic sense to do the right thing than it does to do the wrong thing in somebody's eye as to what that wrong thing might be. So that's where it comes in. That's the nature of the beast. And so, you know, as I said earlier, whether we were talking to Scotty or talking to Nan Hayworth or whomever, I was a Trump skeptic. When Trump was nominated, he made all kinds of promises. One of them was the concept of 1 in, 2 out in terms of regulations. Now, we knew that the regulatory state, the cost of regulations had doubled under Barack Obama, from about $1.1 trillion annually when George W. Bush left office to about $2.25 trillion when Barack Obama left office 8 years later, right? Over the course of time. And I could get into the percentages per year, you know, what had happened. I never thought that anybody could outdo the regulatory tempo of Barack Obama. I was wrong. Joe Biden far surpassed that, essentially growing the regulatory state by another 50% in his first year in office, by another $1 trillion. I'm sorry, in his first year, his first 4 years in office. So the regulatory state now is just under $4 trillion annually. And if we continued on this trajectory, regulations would cost the American economy about $7 trillion per year. This is massive. And so I was a skeptic. Donald Trump appoints the right people to the job the first time around. And whether he delivered on the promise of getting rid of 2 regulations for every 1 new one, we could debate that. What I do know is that on the aggregate, you know, when it comes to the overall cost of regulation, Donald Trump kept regulatory costs constant over time, and this saved the American economy huge sums of money. Probably, well, as we now know, about $1 trillion, almost $1.5 trillion, given what Joe Biden wanted to do. Listen, joining us right now is Erica Donalds. She is the wife of Congressman Byron Donalds. She is the founder and chairman of Optima Ed, a national leader in education solutions. You've got a huge announcement today, don't you, Mrs. Donalds?
I do, and thanks so much for having me on. A lot of people's first day back from vacation, although, you know, many of us have been working through the holidays. But
oh, yes.
Yeah, we announced today that I am joining the America First Policy Institute team as the national chair for their Center for Education Opportunity, replacing Scott Turner, who we hope is going into lead HUD, and Pam Bondi, who will be the next AG, we hope as well. Was leading their Florida chapter, and I will be taking her place as well to build out a policy advocacy juggernaut in the state of Florida, just like AFPI is doing for the federal level, building a bench and creating policies that will be helpful to the next administration. We're going to do that same thing here in Florida.
You know, let's talk about this. Talk a little bit about what AFPI does. I mean, it's a relative newcomer to the policy scene, but they've taken on a lot of experienced hands. Don't want to say old hands, but experienced hands at public policy. My good buddy Jim Carter worked for them for a long time doing economic policies. But talk about AFPI and what they do.
Yeah, you're right. It was created after the last Trump administration, really as a place because we all expected, hey, he's going to be back. And we're going to need to continue the legacy that he started to build in that first administration of America First policies. And how do you do that? Through research and creating policies through kind of a think tank structure, but that's not really enough. So AFPI not only does the research that is really second to none, very top-notch information if you go to their website on a variety of topics, but also built the team that can get out there and message those policies, both to decision makers and policymakers, as well as to the general public. So they're combining the political advocacy side of things, as well as the research side, to really get these better policies across the finish line. They started at the federal level. They started in several states last year and are expanding to even more states this year to do what the founders intended and start at the state level for these policies to take place.
Well, there are all sorts of things that are happening in states that are really, underscoring the idea of states as these laboratories of democracy. I have a podcast out today with Alex Adams from Idaho talking about the things that Idaho's been doing on the regulatory front. But talk about the work that AFPI is doing in Florida and talking about the educational solutions that can be found at the state and local levels that can be then applied at the federal level, assuming, of course, that we want to start ramping down or pulling back this idea of federal involvement in education.
Yeah, absolutely. Idaho is the standard bearer, right, for deregulation. We all want that chart that Elon Musk's retweeted of how much regulation they've been able to cut. I'd love to see that happen in Florida as part of our work here at AFPI Florida. When it comes to education, we've heard Donald Trump promise the American people to eliminate the Department of Education at the federal level. And what that means is requiring an off-ramp. It does need an act of Congress, but in the meantime, we can not only gut the DEI programs, the things that are put in place by administrative order, by rulemaking, as you were talking about earlier, but the block granting of Title I funds and IDEA funds can actually encourage states to put those monies in the hands of parents in order to have parents decide how those funds will better suit their children than the districts themselves. There's also a bill going through the legislature and in Congress that we expect to maybe show up in reconciliation, ECCA, the Education for Children, Choice for Children Act, which would create a tax scholarship program at the federal level, a dollar for dollar individual income tax credit, which would provide scholarships like the ones we have here in Florida for those in other states that will not have school choice. Now, as you said, we want to see these policies at the state level. Florida has led on universal school choice. There are other states that are doing it as well. But we want to create a replicable system here in Florida. People are looking at Florida as the great state of Florida, the free state of Florida. But some of our policies are kind of complicated and not easily replicated in other states. We need to clean those up, and we need to make sure that we can continue to be that leader and that beacon when it comes to things like school choice, deregulation, and the economic environment that we've created here.
Yeah, it's very exciting that you're going to be doing this work. I mean, the work of Optima Ed has been second to none in this regard. I mean, so do you have some immediate goals, some long-term goals? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think our focus, especially at the Center for Education Opportunity, is on education freedom, both for families and for educators. There's been a big story out recently that New Jersey is lowering the standards for their teachers and making them no longer take state tests. Well, I'm going to have an op-ed coming out about this that I think is a little bit of an unpopular opinion based on what I've seen out there. I don't believe in teacher certification. It creates barriers to entry. It eliminates about 90% of our college graduates from being able to enter the teaching profession easily. And so it's one thing that we might actually agree with the union on. We should make it easier to become a teacher and let the parents decide through accountability, through transparency, on whether those teachers are performing well or not. Let education leaders decide who the great teachers are, whether to keep them, hire them, or not. So I think we need to free educators from the bureaucratic red tape that they encounter when they're trying to teach classes or open schools. But most importantly, our focus is in putting in the hands of parents the agency, the ability, the funding to vote with their feet and be able to choose the education environment that works best for their children.
Listen, it's one of those things. I did radio in Baltimore for many, many years and just did a stint outside of Baltimore recently. And Lord knows they've got very stringent teacher requirements and certification requirements in the Baltimore schools. I don't think anybody can say that the students in Baltimore
have benefited.
Right. It's astounding, and obviously breaking the stranglehold of unions. But if we can find some places where the union rank and file can agree with us on these things, I mean, that's how we get policy down the road. Listen, real quick, before I let you go, I mean, how did you get involved in this stuff? The educational issues at the outset. What brought you to this?
As a parent, I'm a mom of 3 boys. I was a CPA and I was in investment management for 20 years, but I found out I didn't have school choice when I needed it for one of my sons, where my A school wasn't working for him. And I thought public schools were supposed to serve all children no matter what they needed. Right. And I found out that wasn't the case. At the time, we couldn't afford private school, but we made it happen anyway. And he absolutely thrived in a classical private school environment. That's when I discovered there are actually a lot of other families out there that need choice as well. And so I've dedicated my life's work to making sure families have the options that they need, that I needed, and that my son was able to thrive in choice schools from then on. He's actually graduating high school now and going to college, and has never had to be in a special classroom, but has always loved school ever since we were able to take him out and choose what was best for him.
Well, listen, I could congratulate you on this new title, but I'm going to go ahead and congratulate AFPI for recognizing talent when they need it and bring you on board. Best of luck in this new gig. How do folks find out more about this good work that you're doing, Erica Donalds?
Well, certainly follow me on X at Erica Donalds, Erica with a K, no C. And now they know how to spell my last name. I always had to tell people how to spell it, but it's pretty well known now, thankfully. Yeah. But at Erica Donalds, follow me on social media, reach out to me on social media. My DMs are open. I want to know what's going on with you, with your schools, with your districts and your states, and how we can help.
Well, great. Erica, listen, I hope to see you at CPAC next month.
Oh, absolutely. We'll be there, and we'll be pushing forward those America First policies for President Trump.
Sounds terrific. You take care. That was Erica Donalds. She has now gone on board with AFPI, the America First Policy Institute, as their Center for Education and care of.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Babes, what are you doing?
What? I'm just mowing the lawn.
No, it's blazing hot and dry out here. Don't you remember? Smokey Bear says.
Avoid using power equipment when it's windy or dry.
Where'd you learn this?
Oh, it's on
SmokeyBear.com with many other wildfire prevention tips.
Right. Thanks, Honey Bear.
Because remember, only you can prevent wildfires.
Brought to you by the USDA Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
All right, son. Time to put out this campfire.
Dad, we learned about this in school.
Oh, did you now? Okay. What's first?
Smokey Bear said to.
First drown it with a bucket of water, then stir it with a shovel.
Wow, you sound just like him.
Then he said.
If it's still warm, then do it again.
Where can I learn all this?
It's all on SmokeyBear.com with other wildfire prevention tips, because only you can prevent wildfires.
Brought to you by the USDA Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
I'll trust water bottles and a flashlight to save the day, but I'll be proved wrong.
With a tornado approaching, I'll realize that I lack a wheelchair-accessible shelter.
When the floodwaters rise, I'll be up in the attic with 20 cans of beans. It's a recipe for disaster.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council. Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
when the storm rolls in, my time to find a pet-friendly evacuation center will have run out.
The scorching heat wave will leave me powerless to cool my insulin.
I'll face a hurricane without meds. Now that's a tough pill to swallow.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at USO.org today. We're with Liam after his 4th military move. When being new is starting to get old. We're with Tara during the holidays when she misses home the most. We're with all service members and their families who need connection, comfort, and a home away from home. Are you with them? Learn more at USO.org today.
Now, back to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back. I am Andrew Langer. So glad I can join you and you can join me. What for me has been a windy, wintry day here in Virginia. So it's a thin slice of heaven, and I'll get to the preview of tomorrow's show in just a minute. Actually, it would have made sense if I'd actually pulled up the emails today so I could get a full accounting for who is joining us tomorrow on the show. But anyway, it is what it is. I'll flub that as I always do. So we've got a real opportunity here. 2 weeks out, man. 2 weeks. 2 weeks out from the inauguration. 2 weeks out from when this all changes. And this is important stuff. This is what I was getting to before Erica Donalds came on. These things matter, right? Joe Biden issuing an announcement that to ban all offshore drilling, or essentially ban most offshore drilling, that has an impact because we've already seen gas prices start to come down in anticipation of regulations changing things. Well, Joe Biden can't have that. The Democrats can't have that. They don't want that legacy for a lot of reasons. They want to do whatever they can to frustrate Donald Trump from having successes. This is the amazing thing to me. When you think back to 2015, 2016, and again, I was a Trump skeptic, came on board when he started to do the things that he promised he was going to do. It was the first time in my lifetime that we ever really had a president who was delivering. You could talk about Reagan and the good things that Reagan did. But Donald Trump was really trying to deliver on his promises. Never had I seen in the modern era a regulatory state where the costs were held constant over the space of a 4-year presidency. And in fact, if you adjust for inflation, actually came down. Never had I seen that. And yet there we were. But at every turn, right, every opportunity, Donald Trump wanted to have infrastructure reform, right? He wanted to have an infrastructure bill. Democrats wouldn't let him have it. Donald Trump wanted to find solutions to a variety of things in the immigration sphere, but the Democrats couldn't have it. There was to be no compromise on those things. And so knowing what's coming down the pipeline and knowing that they don't want Donald Trump to have any successes, God forbid they let J.D. Vance have any successes, being Donald Trump's vice president, because we know he's in the catbird seat for running in 4 years, they're going to start to stymie him early on. That's where we are. And so the point is, this stuff matters. Donald Trump coming in and undoing this executive order on drilling matters. It matters to individual families in terms of the price of the pump. What Erica Donalds is talking about in terms of educational choice matters. Not just to kids who are in school today, but kids who are in school tomorrow, and to the American public, which needs an educated working class, an educated middle class, and an educated upper class. We need those things to have a functioning republic. We need to have a regulatory state that doesn't cripple people with all kinds of burdens. We need to have a housing system that isn't constantly manipulated because of the mandates that are being put out there by Washington, D.C. Expensive water heaters, expensive washing machines. Anyway, tomorrow, Julie Gutlock is going to join us. Adam Leffer's going to treat us. Jerry Rogers will awesome.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.
It's 4 a.m., Monday, and you're literally sucking baby snot through a tube because she's congested. Man, that's love. And if you love her that much, love her enough to make sure she's buckled in the right car seat. To make sure your child's in the right seat for their age and size, visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Show them you love them. Keep them safe. Visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. You let him try violin because you love him. And if you love him that much, love him enough to make sure he's buckled up and in the back seat. Find out more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way. My kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Talk to your kid about vaping. Visit talkaboutvaping.org.
You're listening to Florida's Voice with Drew Steele.